Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm and you are watching third part of What If Kid Naruto pranked Uchiha clan too hard. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Choji was resolute. Although this feeling wasn't entirely new to him, he hadn't been this focused on anything in a long time. That is, something besides food. Asuma. Sensei is going to comprehend. Though the mental whisper did little to stop the nervous energy coursing through his body, he always understands. This feeling wasn't unfamiliar either, like the resolve that was firmly fixed in his mind. No, this sensation was as cozy and comforting as a cup of hot tea after an afternoon snack or a cool summer breeze. It was the warm tingle that he had experienced every time he thought about Ino. She is regarded as a girl and not a bothersome busybody. It began as a little crush, something so immature that he couldn't even think of it as noteworthy now. Choji had only seen her soft, joyful smile and wide, innocent blue eyes, and he knew that Ino was a girl worth getting to know. But getting to know her turned out to be more difficult than he had anticipated, as despite spending endless hours together, there were never enough family play dates to divert Ino's attention from something she had her eye on. And it turned out that it was Uchiha Sasuke. Choji knew that once the blonde girl got really motivated, there was no stopping her, even though it was humiliating to have to swallow his pride and step back to a boy who didn't care about Ino. When he and Shikamaru first met the young Yamanaka, they had to learn that lesson the hard way. Ino received what she desired, whether it was toys, candy, food, or attention, or nobody received what they desired. Though the Akamichi curse might have contributed to that attraction, Choji still found it to be a trait that was far from endearing. With that in mind, Choji came up behind his sensei and said, "Dad did say that any woman strong, cunning, bossy enough to take food away from an Akamichi was probably the girl for him. Since it was their day off and Ino and Shikamaru would undoubtedly be off doing anything they wanted." Choji was grateful that it allowed him to approach Asuma with his proposal. "Asuma. Sensei." The timid response was met with a from the rough, spoken Jonin. Asuma unfolded the scroll, raised an eyebrow at the sealed document and started reading. "One of them is at last beginning to give this some serious thought." Asuma looked up from the parchment and said, "I'm only surprised it wasn't Ino. You know, Choji, you didn't have to write up a formal request to get more training out of me." "I know, but I read somewhere that in order to gain enrollment into the Shinobi Medical Academy, I'll need my Jonin sensei's recommendation. Now, I'm definitely surprised it wasn't Ino." "That's right, but what caused this? Given that women are more adept at controlling chakras, there aren't many medics in the Shinobi Corps, especially males. Well, when Ino passed out yesterday, it got me thinking. What would happen if we were on the field and something happened to one of us? None of us are qualified to handle that situation, and even though you are a Jonin Asuma Sensei, we shouldn't be careless with our lives. I wouldn't be able to bear it if I lost one of you guys," Choji said with an eerie expression. "Also, there's the root of it all, and it's a shame Ino doesn't know what she's missing." "I'm impressed, Choji. Not only did you realize the dangers of our professions on your own, but you actually thought of steps to better get a handle on the problem. That's the type of thinking that makes a good leader, and moreover that's the type of thinking that saves lives," Asuma said while lighting up a cigarette. Even though he was aware that it was a bad habit, he couldn't stop until his veins were filled with warm nicotine. Choji exclaimed, clearly pleased with the teacher's compliment, "So you'll do it?" Asuma exhaled a plume of smoke and said, "I don't see why not. However, the exams are in less than 2 weeks, so you'll have to play catch up if you even want to stand a chance of getting even a partial license." His senses were overloaded with pleasure as the narcotic fumes slowly killed him from the inside out, like an ethereal ambrosia. "I know, Asuma Sensei. Naruto was the one who actually told me about it yesterday. He's aiming to be a medic as well, and possibly a Kenjutsu master judging from the weapon he was holding when I saw him. It really surprised me, seeing as Naruto was such a class clown in the academy, but I guess it just proves that we all have to grow up sometime." Asuma's cigarette fell out of his mouth because he was so speechless. Asuma pondered the words that had just been passed to him while he carelessly ground the cancer stick into the ground and let the devil's candy fall to the ground. Naruto. All of the insight he had witnessed in his least promising student was sparked by Naruto. Of all people. Asuma laughed and sent Choji on his way, telling the boy that he would help get him a place in the medical academy. He did not miss the irony in that. Choji said, "Thank you so much, Asuma Sensei. I won't let you down," before rushing off, most likely to start his studies earlier. Asuma pondered as he traveled to the Hokage's tower, perplexed by the various paths this year's genin crop was taking. That brat is definitely getting interesting. I wonder what the old man will think when I tell him he influenced an Akamichi of all people to become a medic? As she stood in front of the double doors to her father's private dojo, Hinata's only thought was, I'm a nervous wreck. Even though she had a plan and had been thinking about it all night, it did nothing to stop the butterflies in spring fever that were consuming her. Since Hiashi was still the most formidable character in Konoha, aside from the Hokage, it was understandable that someone would feel uneasy when standing at the base of what many called the Lion's Den. After he defeated one of the legendary 7 swordsmen of the mist without a weapon and separated from his group, his Juken became almost legendary. It was said that the Juken strikes were so intense that they even fried the bone marrow of the burly man. But Hinata was not frightened by Hiashi's skill. In fact, she had a dream that she would one day surpass her father in skill and, in a particularly good dream, even surpass his strength. When the shy Hyuga heiress talked to her uncaring father, the thing that upset her the most was his cool disinterest in anything that was even slightly connected to her. It seemed as though he examined everything she did critically, making her feel as though she was deficient in some important way. The fact that this hadn't begun until after her mother's passing was even more painful. Hinata frequently questioned whether her once affectionate father had become distant from her due to his sorrow over the death of his late wife or if there was another factor at play. She could still clearly recall the fiery redhead's words, and the sting of her blows was even more vivid. Hinata had actually been up all night thinking about how to approach her father, who was uninterested but still very intimidating, because of that agonizing outburst. Kasumi did, however, mention that he would probably be available to assist. All I need to do is inquire. But her confidence was not greatly bolstered by that assurance. Thus, the screen that separated her from the goal was moved aside with a single pull, and Hinata entered the almost empty room with a shuddering step. In the middle of the rather spacious room, the only person, aside from herself, was quietly mediating. Hinata was certain that her father knew she was there even though he had made no effort to acknowledge her presence. This demonstrated that, even in his most zen-like states, he maintained a strong disinterest in anything pertaining to his oldest child. With a voice as modest as her demeanor, Hinata said, "Oh Odo. Sama, may I have a moment?" from her bow. For what felt like an eternity, they were silent, and Hinata's gaze remained fixed on her father's back the entire time. She had grown accustomed to seeing it because, during her early years, she had come to associate it with disappointment and failure. Even worse, she believed that seeing her father's back meant she wasn't worth the time it took to gaze at her. "Oh Odo. Sama, I heard you the first time, Hinata, and I will also add it is rather rude to interrupt someone's private reflection time, isn't it?" Hinata's embarrassment burned on her face, but the rhetorical question burned hotter in her mind. "Gomen Odo. Sama, I will be brief. I have come to ask 2 things. One being, can I enter the Konoha Medical Corps? I believe you only need your Jonin Sensei's permission to do such a thing, however I will look over that misstep and grant you your wish. You may join the Corps." The slight embarrassment of wasting her father's time was counterbalanced by the overwhelming sense of joy. Even though it wasn't yet founded on her own merit, Hinata couldn't believe that she had finally won her father's approval. The monk ancestors of the Hyuga were experts in the medical arts before even the first Kata of Juken was created, so she knew she shouldn't be too shocked. After saying, "Arigato gozaimasu Odo. Sama, and for my second request," Hinata took a moment to gather her strength for her subsequent request. The Hyuga head was aware of her caesura and was silently wondering what could be so nerve-wracking for his daughter. "Yes, continue." Hinata blurted out, "I would like to train with you," before covering her mouth with her hand. She not only made a strong demand of her clan leader, but she also interrupted him in the middle of her sentence. "I have disrespected him while simultaneously requesting a favor. What have I done, Kami Sama, to merit this?" But Hinata had no idea that her father's mind was working. In his private dojo, he was rarely interrupted, though the last person to do so was a member of the main branch who challenged him to an honor duel with the position of Hyuga head as the prize. The dojo was dubbed the Lion's Den for anyone still seeking a means of claiming power because the man had to be carried out following the beating he received. Unfortunately, the name and its negative connotations persisted, deterring anyone with anything but the most pressing issues. Issues similar to those his daughter had brought to his attention. The Byakugan master was encouraged by her initial request, even though it was superfluous. He had kept his distance from Hinata in part because she had always been a good person. By keeping his distance, he was attempting to teach the lesson that kindness did have a place in the world, but it wasn't on the battlefield. Regarding her second request, with his tone sounding like a mocking reminder of her shortcomings, Hiashi asked lightly, "You wish to advance your understanding in Juken, even though you struggle with many of the intermediate-level skills?" To see her request through to the end, Hinata mustered the courage to do so once more. "Hi Oto. Sama, that is my wish." Without saying another word, Hiashi stood up, dwarfing his daughter's hunched over figure by at least 5 times. Not backing down Good, she's finally showing some backbone. Hiashi turned around and looked at the girl, searching the pearly depths of her eyes for some indication that this would be worthwhile. And he discovered a strong wall of resolve behind the hesitation and awe. He had never seen his eldest exhibit such behavior before. Hiashi then activated his Byakugan and assumed the Juken cat stance, saying, "Hitomi, our daughter, seems to have taken after you in more ways than one." In response to the silent call, Hinata scurried to her feet and assumed a similar position, her hesitancy faltering as her father gave his approval. She needed to demonstrate to him that she was genuinely prepared to move forward. Hinata used a single-handed technique to activate her Byakugan, and she was able to observe the subtle subtleties in her father's expression thanks to her chakra enhanced vision. This gaze, though still cool and detached, was much more analytical and evaluating, as though he were weighing a threat. Hinata was relieved that her father was paying attention and did not consider her unimportant, even though it was not the affectionate look she had yearned for. "It's now or never," Hinata said, and she rushed forward with that mental force. Hiashi could tell Hinata had been practicing diligently for weeks, if not months, despite the fact that her form was far from flawless and her movements lacked the fluidity of an experienced Juken user. However, the sheer skill gap that separates the two's power cannot be made up by any amount of practice in that constrained amount of time. This was demonstrated when Hiashi used a simple wrist flick to deflect Hinata's opening blow, pushing the focused chakra dagger aside like a curtain over a doorway. For the first time, Hinata could actually see the distance between them. It was akin to an abyss unto itself, one that required years of arduous labor and careful direction to overcome. But now Hinata was the stupid monkey attempting to grasp the image of the moon in the water. "Can't stop." With determination still evident in her eyes, Hinata pushed forward with her other palm, aiming once more for her father's chest. The Hyuga head took note of the resolve, but he repelled her second attempt at his heart with the same vigor that he saw that light. Her form is poor, but her vindication is impressive. The clan lord's thoughts were interrupted by the spear of concentrated chakra from his daughter's foot tip, which was focused on his chin. "Not the qualities of a successful," he said, as his daughter Cart wheeled away from him following her third unsuccessful attempt to score a hit. Hiashi allowed a barely perceptible smile to appear on his face, demonstrating some emotion at his daughter's offensive accomplishment. "Some much like her mother, like Hitomi," he said quietly, and from that utterance came a stream of memories of his late wife, chief among them the scowl she wore whenever she was particularly interested in something. The same scowl Hinata had fixed on her face as she considered another approach to the wall of skill that was her father. Hinata whispered, "I can't stop, I won't stop," as she grasped the twin sai that was mounted on the wall behind her. "The difference in our range is only second to our difference in skill." Hinata still held weapons covered in her family seal and twirled them with great ease, but she never considered that they were the only weapons mounted in the entire dojo or why. In her hands, the cool steel felt both unfamiliar and familiar as her favorite kunai. For some reason, she felt that the crafted steel in her hands was the solution to the problem, though it was difficult to describe. However, Hinata was unaware that the lighthearted twirling of the weapons had inadvertently created yet another comparison between her and her mother, who had passed away. Her mother was one of many who proudly carried on the tradition of the fiercest Hyuga warriors in history wielding sei, an artifact that has been passed down from generation to generation. Even though it was being transferred through a medium, she could execute her Juken with practiced ease and destroy even the most formidable defense with a single blow. They were one of the few mementos Hiashi had of his wife and the Hyuga's crowd favorite. As he dodged Hinata's attacks, the Hyuga head pondered, "My Hitomi, how our daughter takes after you." Similar to her Juken, Hinata's technique was far from as refined as her mother's, but she appeared much more comfortable jabbing and prodding her father with the twin metal prods than she did with the style she had been attempting to perfect for more than 10 years. Therefore, in that sense, fate did indeed operate in mysterious ways, since one must learn to enjoy something before they can truly master it. Hiashi could also tell that Hinata preferred fighting with her mother's sei over her bloodline's antiquated fighting style based on the emotion she was displaying from her ferocious assault. Hya. The small girl threw both of the ancestral weapons forward, punctuating her last charge fiercely. Primed chakra was abundant in both sai, more than enough to close Tenketsu and perhaps powerful enough to influence the coil system as a whole, not just the tips. Though Hinata's most recent blow had the potential to be fatal, it lacked the dexterity required to pose a threat to Hiashi's level of experience. Hiashi avoided the twin prod strike with a casual ease and then tapped his daughter's wrist with the twin tenketsu with a grace that only a Juken master could possess. Hinata's hands painfully seized up due to the abrupt loss of chakra to the extremity. "I'm surprised she didn't drop them," Hiashi observed as he looked down at his slouched daughter, who had become exhausted from her previous blitzkrieg. But through sheer willpower, Hinata is able to hold onto the twin weapons even after the exhausting attack. Even though he managed to hide it well, Hiashi was undoubtedly impressed that his daughter would be the youngest person in history to successfully use the tri-dot-in true Hyuga disarming technique. "Enough. You will report here every evening for additional instruction if that is what you wish," said Hiashi, who was a little taken aback by the softer tone of his usually authoritative voice. Hi arigato gozaimasu oto. Sama. Well then I would like to return to my meditation Hinata. Hi oto. Sama, and Hinata, Hitomi would be proud. The Byakugan master knew his daughter was frozen at the foot of the dojo's threshold, shocked that he had brought up her late mother, without even having to activate his bloodline limit. With a newfound sense of self-assurance, Hinata straightened her posture and left the room, leaving her father grinning a little. Hokage remarked, "Interesting initiative, and honestly quite surprising when taking into account who it's coming from, while sampling the flavorful tobacco of Fire Country. Choji's always been a bit of a slacker, but he has a big heart. Medicine will just be the appropriate channel for the trait." The elder Sarutobi said, "I meant no offense to your student," after noticing a hint of a sharp edge in his son's voice. "I know, but you have a tendency to not be so accepting of others' choices." That one made the Hokage wince. Less than a year had passed since he and his son had made amends, with the catalyst being the death of Asuma's brother and Hiruzen's eldest. Even though they seemed so distant, the words that Asuma had used when she made the decision to serve as the Fire Lord's personal guard were still very much in their memories. As he allowed Asuma's remark to linger, the Hokage observed, "There's no need to reopen a door I successfully closed already." The Hokage conceded and steered the discussion in a more secure direction. "Agreed, but the case at hand is whether or not your student is ready for the rigors of the medical institution," he said. "I believe he is, and I'll cite his clan's study in bodily manipulation and his own determination to protect his teammates as assurances to his seriousness." The Hokage asked, now listening intently to his once stray son as he considered his options. "Good, good, I'm glad to see that another is interested in such a demanded, but rarely sought after, field. However, with the bar exam only 2 weeks away, do you believe Choji will have enough time to make the first cut, or would you rather wait a few months and have him take it during the next exam? Just 2 weeks is going to be a long time, especially when we factor in the new training schedule. However, Choji's family has taught him the majority of the fundamentals of medicine since he is educated in the crude Akamichi methods." Asuma argued to himself, considering the impact of a demanding workload on Green Genin. He'll just need one hell of a tutor and will probably miss a few nights' sleep in the process, but it should be possible. Asuma was finally able to say, in the worst-case scenario he'll have to retake it during the Chunin exams, which shouldn't be a problem as of yet. "Yes, I believe he can do it, but he'll need a tutor to help him." His father gave him a quiet nod, which oddly brought back memories of the times he had made his old man especially proud of him. "It's encouraging to see that you have already put your trust in your Genin team, and with Choji, that makes 3. Hopefully, Konoha will follow soon." "Look, Dad, I realize that my choice to become a member of the Fire Lord's Guardian 12 wasn't the most widely accepted one. Senju Mao, center cherry blossom of the Thousand Forest, was just that to the Sarutobis, the center of their universe within the Village of the Leaves." Hiruzen interrupted, telling his son that he didn't hold any grudges because of his absence. His wife and Asuma's mother was a wonderful woman who complemented the seemingly unstoppable professor in every way. She was willing to risk her life for her village and her loved ones, which made her passing all the more bittersweet for those she left behind, even though she possessed all the elegance, sophistication, and poise of the Senju nobility. The Hokage grimaced softly, recalling one of his late wife's charming qualities. "Hell, I would have left as well, but Konoha needed a leader and I had no inclination of leaving it defenseless. Plus Mao would have called me a pussy for leaving," he said. Senju Mao is typically gentle and sweet, but when agitated, he was a primed explosive tag that produced a lot of profanity and other vulgarities. Sarutobi shuddered when he recalled some of his experiences with the darker aspects of his wife's dichotomy, the most vivid of which was the birth of their youngest child. Asuma asked blindly, not understanding his role in his father's present thoughts, "What was that, Dad?" The Hokage added subtly, suppressing the memory of his injured hand with the warm memory of his wife's expression when she held their youngest for the first time, "Your mother truly loved you is all." The fact that she vowed she would never have another child again is evidence of that. The youngest, who had his own genin team, was in his late 20s. Yeah, I know, and remembering that makes me want to start a family of my own. Yeah, and I assume you've discovered someone who can accomplish that. Possibly, but I don't want to say too much, otherwise I may jinx it. The Hokage said, laughing with his son. Yuhi is a fine young woman, and a capable jonin as well. One that'll keep you in line whenever I'm not around to do so. You say what you want, old man. The elder Sarutobi simply shook his head with a wry smile on his face as he stamped 2 more medical admission forms. Just don't go dying anytime soon, Asuma said, adding, I'm sure Aniki and Ka.San will be mighty pissed at you if you cross over and don't get to see a second grandchild born. The challenge Iruka had given him just minutes earlier still echoed loudly in Naruto's mind, despite his best efforts to concentrate on what Kabuto was saying. The Chunin was willing to teach him a Chunin-level elemental jutsu if he could develop his own unique, working ninjutsu in the remaining days of his month-long vacation. In less than 2 weeks, Naruto made the decision to slightly increase the stakes. Iruka was not at all surprised by the 3 unique techniques for the 3 ninjutsu, and Chunin merely laughed before agreeing to the conditions. However, not before introducing a few of his own terms. Thinking about what it meant to master a jutsu, Naruto was actually relieved that Iruka didn't specify that he had to do it with his own jutsu as well. So I have to master Bunshin, Kawarimi, and Henge techniques on top of creating my own jutsu. Big deal. At the end of it all I walk away with at least 9 ninjutsu under my belt and anything else I managed to get from my other tutors. The slave driver was correct to leave a loophole, because I will never be able to develop a jutsu and perfect it to the point where I can cast it silently, smokelessly, and seallessly in less than 2 weeks. Even though Iruka considered mastery to be on the verge of perfection, Naruto had to respect the man's commitment to honing his craft because he had seen firsthand the positive effects a skilled shunshin could have on a person, and Naruto aspired to be as good as him. As his training with the teleportation technique was finally starting to wear him down, Naruto echoed, plus it'll cut down on the bruises I have to endure when performing that technique. Kyuubi assumed it was his control, and to some extent she was right, but it also turned out that the sheer level of spatial awareness required for that technique was something that most 12-year-olds couldn't yet comprehend. As he casually poked another senbon into the practice dummy, Naruto slipped, supposedly trigonometry helps. Naruto.kun, what was he? As he observed his pupil gradually transforming the practice doll into something akin to the Kusa's voodoo war dolls, Kabuto politely inquired. Just finding out how amazing senbon are, nothing Kabuto. Sensei. Iruka's challenge was pushed to the back of Naruto's mind as he exclaimed with mock exuberance. The young blonde found the entire field of medicine to be completely fascinating, and once he learned how to use it, senbon was much more awesome than kunai or shuriken. Naruto could say that medicine was rapidly becoming one of his favorite subjects, even though he had used his fake enthusiasm to hide his lack of focus. Nearly all of the skills required to be a medic transferred to his other areas of interest, including anatomy, chemistry, and chakra control. Well, I guess you've finally hit the wall, Kabuto said, pushing up his glasses and sighing. Kabuto. Sensei, what do you mean? What I mean is that you are at the point that every aspiring med student reaches in journey to medical enlightenment. And that is, Naruto repeated, a little annoyed by the exaggeration. The place where theory becomes utterly boring and you need some actual, hands-on experience to show you that medicine is still your passion, Kabuto concluded, grinning when he noticed a familiar flash of shine in Naruto's eyes. The same look he gave Iruka when he tempted him with their little bet, the same look he had when he realized he was learning both his father's and his mother's crafts, the same look a young child received when they were given a new toy. So I'll finally get to operate on Kami no, knowing that Naruto was sensitive about his skill level. Kabuto joked playfully, doing that would be like the Hokage condoning human experimentation. So, by hands on, what did you mean? What I meant was that you would be learning to fight like on nin, Kabuto clarified, pushing up his glasses again. His amused glint was obscured by the gleam over his glasses, but it didn't really matter because they were both grinning at the same time. This is going to be enjoyable, after 30 minutes. The older nin's words, now Naruto, you need to moderate your chakra better or you risk burning out your cell's reserves, were overshadowed by Naruto's need to push himself. The blonde's unique new body structure simply did not factor into the debilitating crash that was supposed to occur after extended use of the Taishitai no Jutsu, body control technique. The med. Nin's secret to close combat success was the jutsu, which amplified the output of the body's performance on a cellular level, along with the fact that their taijutsu made an opponent's body work against itself. Riding on that wave of power, Naruto felt every element of his performance, speed, power, and precision, increased to a nigh improbable level before the crest of power filtered into his system, refreshing him like a cool breeze. Naruto could feel the molded chakra within him swell with energy as he focused even more chakra into the jutsu. Break! What the fuck? Naruto yelled as he fell to the ground in the middle of his stride, bringing an end to the fictitious fight between him and Kabuto. As Kabuto had warned, his incapacity to regulate his chakra resulted in internal stress that finally caused his knees to seize up. Actually, given how quickly Naruto's body was recovering from the stress, the reaction should have occurred more than 20 minutes ago, but the older medic found his uniqueness to be an interesting topic once more. As he waved a green, covered hand over Naruto's aching knees, Kabuto thought to himself, I'll have to make note of that in information it achieves. Although the anterior cruciate ligament had sustained the most damage, this was a typical injury in the shinobi world and the seasoned genin knew how to manage it effectively. As he allowed the healing energies to do their work, Kabuto gave the order, slow down for a moment while I fix this. The pain-ridden area experienced instant relief as a result of the nearly immediate effects. As he stood up, Kyuubi's Yuki coping with any lingering pain from the wound, Naruto sheepishly said, "Thanks. I guess I should have listened from before." "Not a problem. I too know how it is to be young, and it was better you discovered your limits here rather than out on the fields where you or your friends' lives may have depended on your ability to execute this technique." "Yeah, but still, I feel as though I owe you an apology." Kabuto smiled kindly, as he always did when the blonde got a little too wild. "Well then, apology accepted, Naruto-kun," he said. Recalling his one obvious weakness, Naruto proposed, "So what are we doing next, Kabuto? Sensei, can we work a bit more on that medic taijutsu? My kenjutsu may be coming along well enough, but you can never be too prepared." His lack of a proper instructor has caused his taijutsu practice to stagnate, making it his least practiced skill as of late. When Kyuubi mentioned her spar with Hinata the day before, he wanted to go out and learn the style she had alluded to, but based on what he understood of the conversation, it would require a lot of medical knowledge and accuracy to master. He simply didn't have either of them yet. But just a few moments ago, Kabuto showed him what might be the answer to his taijutsu problem. The Senju's taijutsu principle served as the foundation for the fundamental sets of the medic fighting method, which became known as MFM over time and was primarily centered on self-defense. 1. This was appropriate given that the granddaughter of Hashimura pieced the style together using elements of her clan's taijutsu practice and numerous anatomical flaws that only a medical professional could readily take advantage of. Reflecting on Naruto's terrifying ability to control his ki, Kabuto thought, he's a far cry from being at Tsunade's level, but there is a certain flair to Naruto's own adaptations, since their taijutsu style was centered on preserving life rather than destroying it. Medics typically lacked access to such advanced techniques. But because Uzumaki Naruto was a complex person, his skillful use of ki completely contradicted that notion. The idea of what the blonde could do with his enormous chakra stores, chakra scalpels, and enough ki to stun an elephant made Kabuto shudder. If his talent were to be useful to anyone, it would need to be carefully shaped. As the teaching fever that had gripped Naruto's other tutors finally settled on him, Kabuto added, he'll need care refinement though, near perfect control to make use of those reserves, as well as a sharp mind to know when to apply it. The older genin was resolved to contribute to the shinobi that would eventually become Hokage after realizing the enormous latent potential that the blonde genin had hidden away. We will get to more taijutsu in time, Naruto. However, first, we will be moving to the basics of poison extraction, which should be just about the level our new arrivals should be at. New arrivals? Kabuto, sensei, you teach other people besides me? No, but as before, this is a special request from above, so I can hardly refuse, Kabuto said mildly, amused by Naruto's surprise. Kabuto was shown by the thinly veiled hurt that Naruto appreciated his lessons and perhaps even his friendship. But the almost possessive tone in his voice made him seriously question whether Naruto's remarkable rate of growth was causing his personality to change. A query for a later date. Kabuto introduced Naruto, who was still gaping like a fish in water, and said, "You'll be working alongside Hinata and Choji, both of whom I believe you've met. It's great that Hinata-chan and Choji will be studying medicine alongside me. But hold on, the board exam is in about 2 weeks. How can they catch up on the material from 2 weeks ago and cover all the upcoming material?" It's funny that you bring that up, Naruto, since the majority of what you've been learning comes from the Academy's remedial curriculum and lessons that the Akamichi and Hyuga instill in their children from birth. Knowing that Naruto would be shaken by the revelation, Kabuto clarified, so really they're about level with you, and will probably have to reread a few sections from the texts I gave you to be up to speed. And he was, but not because his peers were better, rather, it was because being an orphan had once more placed him at a disadvantage. Brooding had never been Naruto's style and never would be, so it was better left to spoil Uchihas. It's not as if I can fault Hinata, Chan or Choji for having families, but this just seemed to come easier for those who do have families, Naruto thought mournfully before putting the melancholy thought out of his mind. As he returned his focus to the lesson, Naruto muttered, I wonder what the bastard is up to now. You are now authorized to train. Don't use the chakra excessively, though. As the boy with the raven hair walked out of the room, the Jonin psychologist called to him, we're still trying to figure out if the genjutsu will still have any lingering effects on your system. Sasuke had been meeting with Yamanaka Inochi for the past 2 weeks to analyze the impact of the Uchiha massacre on his mind. The task was difficult for both of them, primarily because the wounds were so raw that dissecting the situation was like rubbing salt into an open wound. For Inochi, dealing with a preteen who was emotionally scarred was not viewed as a side benefit of trying to learn the secrets of Itachi's genjutsu abilities. For the blonde Jonin, who had studied even the most vile minds while he was an active Konoha ninja, studying the Tsukiyomi was like watching a horror movie that was too personal. The mind. Controlling effects of the Sharingan. Powered genjutsu made the techniques of his clan seem easy. The most frightening aspect of the technique was that, because the user had complete control over the victim's perception, it was both psychologically real to the victim and practically unbreakable. The jutsu literally allowed the aggressor's mind to reroute all of the victim's sensual awareness, even controlling the victim's perception, to the genjutsu's chakra matrix, in layman's terms. Inochi suppressed a shiver at the idea of the horrors Itachi could inflict on a person, and he didn't question why it seemed like attempting to reconstruct Sasuke's mind was like attempting to glue together a priceless vase. Inochi thought sourly, it's only a matter of time until that vase breaks again, and the boy has to face all the pent-up emotions he's storing within it. He hoped that by that time, the boy's life had stabilized enough that he would be able to handle the ensuing shitstorm. It was a slim hope. Unknown training facility. Tat-tat-tat-tat, tat. Sasuke increased the pace and kept hammering at the padded tree, his muscles screaming for him to stop, his fists hurting, but every time he slowed even a little, the image of Itachi's blasé face crept into his mind, so he retreated into his thoughts and continued the mantra of hammering fists against bark. Why? Why did he do it? What could have made him want to measure his capacity against his own family? Sasuke thought as he buried his fist into the bark of the tree, a blind strike of anger. Recalling Itachi's crime with haunting accuracy, Sasuke wrung his bloodied hand in anger as the memories swept over him, each death another reminder of his mission, and he didn't even realize he'd chakra charged his fist with his natural element. When Sasuke realized he was not alone on this training field, he got up and forced himself back to the training post for another round. Cursing his negligence, the raven-haired prodigy threw a handful of shuriken in the direction he felt the hidden presence, and the stars flew randomly in the direction of his target, hitting the shadowed tree with a faint thud. Sasuke cursed once more, saying, that's what I get for damaging my dominant arm. He promised to use his left arm more effectively as soon as he had the chance, but before the boy could see whether he had hit his target, a spontaneous displacement of air informed him that the target was now behind him. Fast, the boy mumbled breathlessly as he leapt away, attempting to put some distance between himself and his swift attacker. However, the strategy was ineffective, and the shadow's speed interrupted Sasuke's spontaneous barrel roll once more. Now, in a desperate attempt to escape, Sasuke gripped two kunai in reverse before turning to face his green beast. Sasuke could only describe the figure in front of him as a mass of muscle that was tightly bound by green spandex, which, along with the bowl haircut and block eyebrows, caused Sasuke to pause and consider the situation. The boy's discomfiture only increased as he examined the oddity of a man before him. Sasuke sarcastically threw a cautious glance at the monster of a man and lowered his kunai, saying, he has a Konoha Hiat and a Konoha-issued Jonin's vest, but still he could very well be hiding in a henge. Never mind, no one in their right mind would henge into that, in order to go unnoticed. So most likely he's just sympathizer or something of that, which is, just great, because now I don't whether I should be relieved or scared that this thing was following me. What made you observe me? After years of being stalked by fervent fangirls, Sasuke responded angrily to the demand. The green giant laughed at his own statement and said, I was just wondering why someone would be using such a secluded training spot, my training spot, for something as trivial as taijutsu. It helps me relax, Sasuke eventually conceded, feeling a little embarrassed that he had assumed the man was encroaching on his personal space when, in fact, it was the exact opposite. Ah, someone who recognizes taijutsu's actual beauty. Taijutsu is an art form that uses the artist's body to express their intentions, feelings, and even dreams, whether you realize that or not. Sasuke was intrigued by this because he didn't think something so profound would come from a man as noticeable as the one in front of him. Who are you? At last, feeling oddly drawn to the giant of a man, Sasuke asked. I have several names. The bearer of the flame of youth, or Konoha's azure beast, but you can call me Guy. Sensei for someone like you. Guy. Sensei? Are you genuinely going to impart any knowledge to me? Yes, I will, my newest pupil. The man cried out, unfazed by Sasuke's initial hesitation. But why? Guy was actually stopped in his tracks by the simple question. As he turned to face the young Sharingan heir, a wide range of emotions flashed through his eyes, some of which were obvious to the young Uchiha and others that were shrouded in mystery. Sasuke recognized many of these emotions, including pride, envy, and even a hint of longing, all of which were feelings he experienced while living in Itachi's shadow. This alone created a tiny bond between the two men, one that gave Sasuke confidence that Guy's intentions were not motivated by pity or greed. Because your art, or taijutsu, demonstrates that you have a purpose that can lead you down a variety of paths. In that regard, I believe it is my responsibility to assist you in developing that art into something worthwhile. But before you accept my offer, know that you will be in for the most terrible training of your life. But do realize that I am neither soft nor kind to those I teach, something you will soon discover, Guy said, his tone consistently somber despite his initial impressions. Sasuke nodded his head and said, hellish training if I am going to take down Itachi, then I will need all the experiences in hell I can get. The taijutsu master smiled softly, having placated the force that had compelled him to take Sasuke under his wing, and now it was time to present him to his training partner. Sasuke's world was forever altered when a tiny green beast suddenly materialized. Good, now draw your chakra back to your palm, and with it you should collect all the poison you managed to bind, Kabuto told the three genin. It should come as no surprise that Hinata almost received all of the poison, since her study of Juken laid the groundwork for her amazing chakra control. Kabuto wasn't sure which of the two boys performed better, but they both collected roughly half of the poison that was filtered into the water basin. What set them apart was the amount of chakra they use. Choji, who had a basic understanding of how most medical jutsu work and fair chakra control, finished the task with only about twice the amount of chakra needed, while Naruto, even with his specially tuned medical chakra, nearly tripled the chakra waste, but it didn't seem to matter with his reserves. As he proceeded to test his theory, Kabuto pondered, Naruto should have better control than that by now. Could it be that the chakra is only malleable when used on human life, or could it be that something else is interfering with the molding process? Kabuto gestured for Naruto to collect the remaining poison from the basin and watched critically as Naruto created the seals for the poison. Removing jutsu and started applying it to the poisonous water. Unlike before, Naruto had little trouble siphoning the poison from the liquid. Before removing another vial of poison, this one labeled as a weak corrosive agent, Kabuto said out loud, that shoots the first theory, and now for the second. Kabuto mixed the dull red poison into the water after pouring the contents into a purified basin, until the only sign that the water was tainted was the stench it gave off. Kabuto said, Naruto, see if you purify this one, and the blonde shrugged and went to work. Naruto's chakra control was shot again, just like on the first attempt, and his face showed the effort it took to extract the lethal material. Kabuto used the diagnostic jutsu to examine the extraction process after becoming curious and activating the Shinryo no Jutsu. To the astonishment of the silver-haired nin, Naruto was in fact using chakra to absorb the molecular structures of the poison. The procedure wasn't unprecedented because a small number of med.nin who were experts in poison control also went through it, but Naruto's rate of completion was almost unbelievable. After a moment, the three genin started to worry as Kabuto's shock at the entire revelation became more apparent. Anyo, Kabuto. Sensei, is there something wrong with Naruto-kun? Hinata asked humbly, her stutter completely erased from her vernacular due to her concern for her idol. No, if you don't think that Naruto's ability to consume poison, such as saline, is a problem, then no. However, if my suspicions are right, Naruto might never have to worry about mastering this exercise. What? Why am I doing it now, then? The blonde responded sulkily, obviously annoyed that his efforts might have been in vain. Kabuto went on to explain, because I didn't realize that you were able to assimilate toxins at rapid speed, speeds that far outstrip any poison specializing med.nin, before the three genins' faces lit up with surprise. Really now I was wondering if that feeling I was getting was normal. How is Naruto-kun feeling? After hearing the boys' thoughts, Hinata spoke for the entire group. Well, I felt like I was ingesting some of the new poison each time I attempted to remove it from the basin. The blonde's embarrassment only increased when three of his friends gave him a, "You think? Look. I probably should have mentioned it earlier, but it didn't seem to be a problem considering that I didn't feel any of the adverse effects," Naruto explained with a sheepish grin. "Naruto, is there anything else you want to say?" "Well, seeing as you brought it up, along with tingling sensation I was getting from the assimilation, my hands are feeling a bit funny." "How amusing." Wondering what else Naruto might have concealed beneath his sleeve, Kabuto pressed. Naruto said hazily, "Funny in the sense that I can make that tingling sensation anytime I want," unable to articulate his feelings. "Show me." Following the med-nin's instructions, Naruto started directing his medical chakra into his hands. However, this time, in contrast to the numerous times he had previously channeled the healing forces, there was a change in his chakra. It wasn't sinister or anything, but it also lacked the calming sensation that his healing chakra normally provided. Instead, it felt like the raw tingle of a needle pricking the skin, but it felt just as natural to the blonde as calling his healing chakra. When Kabuto looked more closely, he saw that the energy was definitely chakra, but it was also being transformed into something else. The end result was a purplish energy with a faint haze like quality. "Is it possible that Naruto is projecting the poisons that your body has absorbed through your chakra?" Kabuto cried out before using his Shinryo no Jutsu once more. According to his theory, the purple chakra was rebuilding the poisons that had been absorbed. Naruto stared at his hands in shock and said, "How is that possible? I know with training you can learn to harness the various elements with chakra, but poison." All of his genin friends felt the same way, but they all eventually attested to the fact that what Kabuto had described was indeed taking place. The group fell silent for a moment as they all paused to consider what was going on. Although Naruto may have, in a way, activated a bloodline limit that only he could use, the main concern for each of them was that it might make him potentially toxic to everyone around him. Kabuto pushed his glassing out of nervousness and said, "Naruto, I know this is all new, and probably exciting to you, but I'm going to have to ask you to not tinker with that chakra until we've studied it further." Naruto numbly replied, "Hi Kabuto. Sensei, I understand the dangers that this could possibly pose everyone," as he attempted to process yet another of the swift changes his body was going through. Naruto wished desperately that Kyuubi was in her cell right now rather than posing as a distant relative of his and wandering the village. A significant portion of him was deeply perplexed by the entire circumstance and questioned whether Kyuubi had intended for this to occur in addition to all the other changes his body was going through. "I suppose everything has a cost, but who would have thought that cost would be toxicity?" With a dark chuckle, Naruto laughed without realizing it. Hinata put a tentative hand on her crush's shoulder and inquired, "Naruto-kun, are you okay?" Much of her was in turmoil over the situation, just like Naruto. But Hinata saw that this was the one moment when Naruto needed her help, not the other way around, so she took advantage of the chance to express her feelings. Naruto snapped back, "What do you think?" and instantly cringed at how harsh his tone was. While Hinata-chan was attempting to be the ideal friend and support system, he went ahead and cut her down for her efforts. Before taking Hinata's outstretched hand in his own, Naruto moaned in private, "If only I could go back in time and kick myself in the ass." To the Hyuga heiress's delight, Naruto changed his statement to, "I'm sorry Hinata, that was uncalled for, and to answer your question, no, I'm not alright." Gazing into the harrowed eyes of her crush, the shy brunette felt butterflies in her stomach. This is your opportunity as he is opening up to you. Even though the girl's conscience was screaming at her, she was unable to speak. Luckily for her, Naruto was unaware of her internal conflict. Instead, her blonde hero responded to her silence with an eerie laugh and a grateful smile. The morbid joke only grew funnier to the boy as Naruto exclaimed, "It's funny you know. I'm here worrying about all the strange shit that's happened to me. I mean really wondering if I may be the death of everything around me because of some out of the blue ability to construct poison. And then there's you, the one person who actually sees me as me even when all this shit is still happening. You actually go as far to extend a hand in support, when literally you may die because, and yet and still I find a way to turn it all back on me. I don't know what's funnier, the fact that I have such great friends or the fact that I am a complete asshole them," Naruto continued. his words causing those around to gasp. Naruto-kun, you're just confused. Yeah, but shouldn't be an excuse, especially when someone as great as you is actually showing me that I'm not alone. After Hinata became acutely aware that Naruto was giving her his full attention, she was able to leave. Why? You're still being too hard on yourself, Naruto-kun, she said. In response, Choji put his own hand on Naruto's shoulder, attracting the blonde's attention to the near. Hyperventilating Hyuga. Yeah, we all get frustrated at times, Naruto. My dad's told me numerous tales of how he snapped at one of his teammates on one occasion or another, and to this day they're still the best of friends, Choji said. The point is though, no matter how frustrated you may be with someone, if they are truly your friends then it won't matter to them if you unintentionally say something hurtful, Kabuto concluded after raising his glasses once more. The apprehensive quality had only grown charming to blondes, and he accepted the older genin's remarks with a sincere smile. Concerned about his home, Naruto said, "Thank you, but that still doesn't change the fact that I may end up killing you all, once more. Some reason I highly doubt you'll become a toxic biohazard overnight. My guess is that you just activate a latent bloodline limit of sorts. One that'll probably end up saving our hides one time or another." I agree with Choji-san, Naruto-kun. There's no way you'd let body could unknowingly hurt us without some sort of conscious effort. As he and the other two genin concluded, Kabuto said, "See, have a little faith in yourself, Naruto, but for the time being we'll play it safe and study this development in a safe environment." Any that wraps up today's session. Make sure to continue your various readings, and we'll meet again tomorrow. Before departing the clearing directly outside the hospital compound, the three genin hurriedly packed their belongings and chatted happily as they traveled to their next destinations. With a particularly curious gleam in his bespectacled eyes, Kabuto glanced back down at Naruto's basin after the three had vanished from view. Before heading back into the hospital, Kabuto thought earnestly, I will need to carefully document these next few weeks with Naruto-kun. The 2 weeks of Naruto training that were left seemed to vanish in front of the busy blonde. To say that the past few days haven't been productive would be a huge understatement, even though Naruto hadn't made much progress with the Rasengan or the Hiashi in those 2 weeks. Naruto had been diligently practicing 3 new jutsu as part of his wager with Iruka. Even though none of them were particularly noteworthy on a larger scale, Naruto was incredibly proud of his creations. He was eager to give his soon-to-be revived clan their first real combat run since they were the first 3 of their new jutsu. His real training sessions with the aforementioned instructor, Anbu, were more routine in nature. Their sessions became less about controlling chakras and more about different ninjutsu theories and techniques, as well as how to create jutsu. A steep learning curve and a lot of reading were part of the adjustment, some of which could have been prevented had the slacker blonde actually paid attention in class. But out of sympathy for his favorite student, Iruka gave him a copy of Konoha's Squad Leader Protocol Manual, which summarizes the majority of the topics taught in the academy. He also increases the intensity of his training with his other senseis. He was learning more about seals and genjutsu from Kurenai and Anko than he had ever dreamed possible, but it didn't bother him in the least because the information only strengthened his desire to be successful in those domains. This same drive continued into his Kenjutsu training with Tenchi. Despite a number of strange training exercises, such as being confined to a circle that was only 1 meter wide and having to parry him while the shadow clones surrounded him, Naruto discovered that his reflexes and reaction time had greatly improved. Sadly, Naruto discovered that he was still unable to draw his own blade, which was quickly turning into a source of annoyance for the blonde. Tenchi simply commented that it was a final test for him as a swordsman. Naruto was relieved to learn that he was not turning into a walking biohazard, in contrast to the partial failure in the Kenjutsu area. After a battery of tests, he and Kabuto discovered that his apparently amazing capacity to both absorb and produce toxins was actually a remarkably similar process to a mix of elemental and spatial reconstruction. Naruto was making the different toxins that were recorded in his own cells, so his poisons were an example of spatial construction, with his medical chakra being the pinnacle of elemental reconstruction. Even Kyuubi was intrigued by the development, and after some inference, he concluded that the technique's origins most likely lay in the breaking of the seal. Even though the Yondaimi's seal's exact mechanism was still unknown, it was clear from some of its primary features that the man was practical. The purifying seal, which filtered elements of Kyuubi's Yuki and siphoned them into a sophisticated medical seal that held healing chakra, was one such function. It is debatable whether the Yondaime included it because he anticipated the village's response to his sacrificed children or because he was afraid of the world in general, but when the seal burst, it came into contact with both a deadly poison and Kyuubi's powerful Yuki. From there, Kyuubi deduced that the Yuki had adapted to the poison at a startling rate, enabling his healing system to do the same as the seal burned coiling for his healing chakra into his system. The Namikaze heir spent many days learning to control his newfound power and trying to absorb as many poisons as Kabuto would allow him to. This led to the birth of Shuki, miasma, as the two blondes had come to refer to the technique. The older blonde, however, prevented Naruto from ingesting too many poisons by pointing out that he might have to wait months to retake his board exam if he were to forget his system. Naruto was now taking his finals in all of his other classes. With just 1 day left before his board exam, he began with the combined Anko, Kurenai, and Iruka tests. Naruto, this is your final test, don't hold anything back. Yeah brat. What Ruka.kun here is trying to is, don't fuck up and make it seem as though all three of us wasted a month of our time training your talentless less ass. With mock sadness, Naruto retorted, gee, you sure lay it on thick Anko. Sensei. It's times like these I wonder why I even bother. Courtesy of Konoha residential snake mistress, Kurenai thought wryly as she massaged her sinuses to try to prevent another migraine from forming. In moments like these, Kurenai questioned how she had ever gotten to know Anko so well. However, a warm smile spread across the brunette's face after she caught a glimpse of Anko playfully harassing Naruto. Iruka joked, if you would Anko, let Naruto be for the moment, seeing as we still need him in one piece for his exam. After that he's all yours, before Naruto gave his favorite teacher a fake betrayed look. Iruka simply ignored his favorite student's adorable puppy face before looking into Anko's happy eyes. When Iruka realized that the approving look Anko was giving him couldn't be described as anything less than sinful, he asked nervously, why'd I feel as though I just put up a sign saying me next, around my neck? Kurenai interrupted when she noticed the familiar gaze of her fellow kunoichi shooting the Anbu Class Academy instructor, asking, anyway, Naruto, do you understand your objectives? Yes. I am to engage you, Iruka, and Anko. Sensei in a mock battle. During this battle I am to meet each of your passing criteria. Which are? Passing criteria for you Kurenai. Sensei is to show competence in at least 3 genjutsu. As for Iruka. Sensei, I am to meet the requirements to our prior bet, and for Anko. Sensei, show proficiency in seal preparation and execution. Naruto wrote down prior to taking a ready position. You can have your fun later, now be serious, was Kurenai's stern look to Anko. She received a childish snort in return, and then a familiar tingle touched her senses. Naruto suddenly charged at the 3 jonin that were standing. Anko was able to beat the jonin to the punch literally in spite of the initial surprise and throwing him all off balance. Anko yelled, too slow Gaki, before slamming her fist through Naruto's face. Before the clone burst into a flurry of light, the snake summoner began, what the? The notorious flashbang Bunshin is back. As his eyes adapted to the new light, Iruka said, smokeless, sealless, but not silent. Then again, that would defeat the point of the bang, now wouldn't it? Iruka was proud that Naruto had mastered a jutsu, and he gave his favorite student the benefit of the doubt. Anko asked loudly, damn it, you knew he did that didn't you, Nai-chan? The annoyance of falling for the same trick again is clearly getting to her, even after 6 years. Maybe, Anko demanded, oh wipe that smug smirk off your face, and help me find that brat. I owe him an ass. Kicking for that one, just as a pit viper slithered out of her trench coat sleeve. The sandy brown snake-eyed Anko after languidly sticking its head out. The woman simply let out a sigh and skillfully tossed a senbon to her side. All it took was a high-pitched squeal for the viper to quickly depart from its master's side and go eat its fallen victim. As the serpent finished swallowing the summer hair whole, Anko declared, damn bastards, always asking for a fucking offering, now that I'm done getting extorted, we can find that little brat. The viper cautiously raised its head and looked side to side, allowing its chakra enhanced detection senses to lead it to the hidden blonde. Noting that the snake could move much more quickly than its natural counterparts, Naruto, who was concealed not too far from the area, could watch in horror as the summoned pet slithered toward him with startling speed. However, Naruto had more important concerns, specifically Mitarashi Anko's Seneashu, hidden shadow snake hands, which she fired less than a meter from his face. Shit. Boom. Long before the blonde's startled face was replaced with log, the fangs of the different serpents ripped into its skull. Kawarimi. If he can do it without hand seals, then damn that Gaki is improving, but we are his senseis, right? Nai-chan? Anko let out a loud gloat, but there was silence in response. Anko turned around just in time to see her colleague's fist hone in on her face, wondering, what no tired sigh or smart remark about my maturity. Despite this, Enko demonstrated that the skill gap between her and Naruto was simply too great, and the snake mistress skillfully and fluidly navigated through Naruto's onslaught before striking the boy with a series of serpentine strikes. Enko recalled the cushioned sensation each of her blows met as she recalled, "What's with that henge? Not only can I not sense its chakra, but it seems to be solid as well." She turned back to the downed genin and watched as the disguise peeled off the blonde without even a sound or a wisp of smoke, indicating that he had mastered all three of the academy jutsu. "Are you prepared to give up, brat?" Unaware of the massive amount of chakra building up inside the blonde or the foxy grin plastered on his face, Naruto simply assumed his thinking pose as if he was actually debating a response, face clearing and mocking Enko with a "Do you have to ask?" expression. An angry tick appeared on the female's forehead, and without hesitation, Enko went in to clobber some manners into her smart-ass student. Datbeo Bunshin Deibakuha, great explosion clone. The Naruto clone chanted happily before destroying her ass with a nuclear blast. Alongside Iruka Kurenai cursed Enko's overzealousness as a trace of worry for her friend clouded her head, and both she and Iruka turned towards the blast zone after hearing the sounds of a rattling explosion. Iruka saw the explosion extend just above the canopy line of the surrounding forest. "Judging from the blast, that was either a mild power explosion node or an exploding clone," she said. "Do you believe?" "No, Enko is definitely skilled, even though she may be careless." Iruka reasoned with the genjutsu specialist. "Plus, I doubt Naruto would use that technique unless he had the fullest confidence in Enko's ability to escape it." But before Kurenai could express her worries any further, the tingling sensation in the back of her head returned, and the red-eyed woman moved to disable the genjutsu. According to Naruto.kun, Nensogo no Jutsu only works when the target is unsteady or not paying attention. Kurenai yelled, "I thought I pounded that much into her head before," just as a veiled area where Naruto had been hiding began to unravel. Before two clones appeared next to him, the aforementioned blonde wasted no time in forming his favorite seal. "He even took time out to master the cage bunshin," Iruka said with a smile on his face before using one kunai to block 3 senbon waves. Iruka fell back when the second wave arrived and watched the two clones that were aiming at him as they circled in the treetops while he created the seals for a Doden. Doryuheki. Immediately, 4 earthen walls surrounded Iruka, completely protecting him from the clone's constant senbon spray. He's no longer a child, and will not be treated as such, Iruka thought as he found his center, despite the constant beating the stone walls around him were taking. Naruto had demonstrated that he could be a competent ninja, and his current circumstances attested to that. Now, Iruka was going to see how he measured up. Iruka mouthed, "Doden. Dutome, Earth Release, Earth Transparency," and then the walls surrounding him turned into a one-way mirror. The scarred Chunin looked around and saw that Naruto had duplicated himself multiple times and that Kurenai was no longer there. "It's time to cut his numbers. Doryuden, Doden." The omnidirectional stone attack from the exploding earth wall was signaled by the Anbu's cry. Some of the clones were able to Kawarimi away and escape destruction from the flying shrapnel, but most were caught off guard. But as soon as it arrived, the earth and metal storm subsided, leaving Iruka alone in the destroyed clearing. Iruka turned to face Naruto, who was standing in the forest canopy above, grinning his trademark foxy smile, after surveying the damage caused by the rock projectiles. "I take it you like what you see. Oh, while I do like seeing what wonders I can create with a simple ninjutsu, what I really love is testing out some of my own ninjutsu." "Really now?" and her eye was worried that you would go a flake out on our agreement. With a broad smile, Naruto retorted, "Not a chance," and then formed the hand seals required for his first new jutsu. His first jutsu is a Kaden, isn't it? A tiger seal. As Naruto completed the third and last seal to his jutsu, Iruka pondered. The blonde's hands gradually filled with a perfectly contained ball of fire. The limited time Naruto had to work on it certainly slowed down the process, but aside from that, Iruka didn't see any significant issues with the jutsu. Before lowering himself into a ready stance, the academy instructor said, "Now to see what it does." To his surprise, Naruto didn't just use the fireballs as burning spear tips for his punches, as dozens of options raced through the Chunin's head. No, it was all in the jutsu's name. As he hurled the explosive ball at his sensei, the blonde exclaimed, "Kaden. Bakuhagen, Fire Release. Blast Sphere." As it sailed faster than a senbon towards the stunned Chunin, the fiery ball maintained much of its power despite being severed from the continuous loop of chakra. But after years of practicing his reflexes, Iruka was able to jump to the side of the projectile and put himself just far enough away from the sphere to avoid the blast that ensued. Iruka's senses were assaulted by a dazzling light and the stench of charred wood, but neither of these things diminished her admiration for Naruto's jutsu. It's unbelievable that Naruto was able to fit so much destructive power into such a small area. Looking at the hemispherical crater left in the wake of the jutsu, Iruka realized it was almost as powerful as an explosive tag. After more investigation, Iruka discovered that Naruto had succeeded in condensing the concentrated power of a Kaiden. Tenka pumped a tremendous amount of chakra into a small area before launching it outward. The burnt groove Iruka saw at his feet would result from the blast's expansion in size after the user released it from its confinement seal. Impressive, Naruto, you've definitely earned one of those jutsu I promised you. Now let's see if you can get the other two. The blonde responded, don't worry Iruka. Sensei. I rarely disappoint, prepared to take on his sensei's challenge. Alongside Kurenai silently mouthed, Shinkiji, nerve deception, while the two attacking clones smokelessly poofed themselves out of existence. It is a common misconception that shadow clones needed to be touched in order to spread. In actuality, the delicate doppelgangers were dispersed by any trauma that could overwhelm the clone's chakra matrix. Naruto discovered this lesson the hard way after reviewing the recordings of both of his clones' deaths. Naruto was astounded by his sensei's skill and winced at the prospect of being slowly skewered by hundreds of deadly, sharp senbon. The jutsu was so intricately molded that it actually fooled his clones into thinking that senbon had struck them from all sides. Naruto grimaced as he produced a fresh batch of clones to replace the fallen lot, saying, and knowing Kurenai. Sensei, that's just a small sampling of what she can do with that technique. As he attempted to time Kurenai's counterattack and the clones charged to his own surprise, Naruto chanted, wait for it, wait for it. Kurenai was about to use a kunai to cut through one clone when Naruto's gambit paid off, and her arm froze as though it were being held by a puppeteer's string. As Kurenai directed her chakra into her captured arm, she instantly realized, damn, he must have hidden a shadow clone under a Nensogo no Jutsu when he summoned the others. After a precise counterstroke of chakra, the genjutsu binding her faltered, allowing the illusionist to deflect Naruto's clones. Even with all of their practice with Tenchi, the clones were unable to withstand Kurenai's rapid kunai work, despite their quick reaction to the dodge. Before using another genjutsu, the Jonin subtly thanked a specific Sarutobi for his assistance in the taijutsu area. Shit genjutsu, Naruto swore as his vision became obscured by different flower petals. Kurenai claimed to have a unique affinity for plant-oriented genjutsu because they were adept at manipulating their surroundings, which made it simpler for them to deceive the senses. Naruto added, yeah, so dispelling it gonna be a bitch, while attempting the conventional release technique. It should come as no surprise that the genjutsu was constructed so that a chakra burst would only glide around it rather than locate and destroy the illusion. Nevertheless, Naruto's attempt was not in vain, as a tuneful chuckle reverberated all around him. It seems I taught you well, Naruto-kun. Your Sujiniju no Jutsu, muscle submission technique, caught me by surprise, and you almost managed to dispel my last genjutsu, the echo said. But rather than assisting Naruto in locating Kurenai, the confusion merely concealed Kurenai's true hiding place. Naruto grinned and used his favorite ninjutsu, saying, need to stall, thanks Kurenai. Sensei, I learned from the best. As Kurenai moved to knock him out, the kunoichi whispered into Naruto's ear, flattery will get you nowhere. Her kunai was poised to his neck, but Naruto was unconcerned. As the clone dispersed, the red-eyed Jonin was met with a poofing of smoke, and during the confusion, Naruto flashed through the hand seals of another jutsu. As he put the flash bang clone idea on hold for another day, Naruto thought, I caught her off guard with that. Now only if I could incorporate the flashbang technique into a shadow clone, then I would have actually had time to dispel her genjutsu rather than being forced to search for her with this. However, Kurenai simply stepped back into her genjutsu and was hidden from his sight, according to his assessment. Naruto muttered, time for a real test run, Kimafushi no Jutsu, joint sensation technique. As a variety of gray contour lines appeared in his vision, Naruto grinned as he changed the genjutsu settings, causing the dull lines to be replaced by a variety of colors that formed hazy trails around him. Before discovering a concentration of several scents in a nearby treetop, Naruto declared, you know you're right, Kurenai. Sensei, flattery will get you nowhere. However, there is a difference between flattery and stating facts, and if you being the best genjutsu user in Konoha wasn't a fact, then I doubt I would have ever been able to make this technique, to start. Gotcha. Kurenai began. Naruto-kun, what are you? But she was attacked by more than a dozen shadow clones who knew exactly where she was. so she was unable to finish. Cursing inaudibly, the clones started firing off Senbon with the help of multiple chakra. Charged futon. Bufu before Kurenai could even check to see if her genjutsu had been compromised. Kurenai did a quick shunshin and threw herself out of the line of fire from the needles. Thankfully, she was able to maintain her illusion and genjutsu skills despite her hasty release of chakra into the delicate chakra molding. However, given that the boy fairly accurately followed her escape route, she might as well have put a neon sign around her neck in response to her student's new jutsu. Under the pretense of her illusion, Kurenai defeated a number of the doppelgangers before slipping away from the approaching wind jutsu, this time better equipped to handle the wave of clones and projectiles. This child is a dynamo. With a twinge of jealousy, Kurenai realized, I might have already been defeated if it weren't for his inexperience. Although it hurt her pride to think that a genin, who was still her own student, had outperformed her, she also felt proud that she had contributed to his success. I bet you're wondering how I am able to track you. It's really easy. The Kimafushi lets me combine senses, like scent and sight, for example, Naruto said after getting no response. Naruto was aware that it was improper to explain your abilities to opponents, but in this instance, buying time was more important than following codes. Kurenai only realized this after the blonde zoned in on her location once more. The genjutsu mistress scolded him angrily, saying, "Shit, I should have kept moving as he was speaking." Because of Naruto's frequent use of futon jutsu, the area was filled with a variety of scents, completely masking her own. However, by piquing her interest, he was able to buy himself enough time to allow the smells to settle and isolate her scent once more. A really amazing jutsu, but now that I understand how it works, I can adapt, Kurenai said, demonstrating why she was the leading genjutsu expert in Konoha. It was easy to fool the mind into thinking that she and the surrounding areas smelled like freshly picked flowers thanks to the genjutsu she had used to disguise herself. But now that she knew Naruto could follow her due to that specific scent, she would only need to choose which hand seals to use to fool it. Naruto knew it was time to change strategies when her scent was entirely out of his line of sight. Naruto activated a particularly potent futon Uzu in the middle of the battlefield, kicking a lot of dust and debris as he swiftly changed the genjutsu settings to sight and sound. The whirling airs gave Naruto cover to make his escape, but they were insufficiently strong to harm the hidden kunoichi. Kurenai felt compelled to pursue the escaping student, but she couldn't get rid of the sensation that she was being led along like a chicken chasing breadcrumbs. Alongside Anko, I'm gonna kill that brat. Naruto winced at the blatant declaration, even from his hiding place. The blonde assumed that using such a risky technique in such close quarters was foul play, but he was certain that Anko was the most proficient kunoichi he had ever encountered. It wasn't a jab at Kurenai, Tenten, or any of the other kunoichi he had encountered. Rather, it was the harsh reality that they would be picking up the pieces from snake feces if Anko engaged in serious combat with any of them. But Anko lacked the foresight and self-control that matched her raw skill. Tisk tisk Anko. Sensei, your carelessness will be your demise, but the hiding genin received justice when the pit viper Anko had previously called sniffed out his location once more. Anko's head perked up and turned toward the blonde, but it didn't take him long to realize he was fucked when the serpent hissed something he couldn't understand. As she surrounded herself in a shunshin and closed the distance between herself and her victim, the snake kunoichi's eyes danced to a homicidal melody. Anko emerged from her chakra, powered acceleration before Naruto could chastise himself because a punch appeared next to his head. Thankfully, Naruto was able to replace himself with a hastily constructed shadow clone and was attempting to put as much distance between himself and the idiot he foolishly enraged. The blonde's go.to mantra as he scuttled through the thick Konohan canopies, not even daring to turn to face his pursuer, was, "Fuck, fuck, fuck, fuck." Knowing full well that the pictures would only make the blonde run faster, Anko went back to some of her more rudimentary methods of torture in response to the images his quickly vanishing clones were sending him. Luckily, he was able to avoid Anko long enough to arrive at a group of his own clones. Sadly, those clones were now fighting Iruka in a ninjutsu battle that was getting hotter by the second. A clone exclaimed, "Sweden! Sui anime, water release, water animation," as it revealed Naruto's second original jutsu. When Naruto saw his meticulously chosen hand seals come together in a magnificent jutsu unity, he was ecstatic. A sizable cluster of water gradually gathered in front of the clone user, and with a simple wrist flick, the liquids were able to dance to the minstrels of his clone. After testing the jutsu responsiveness for a few moments, the blonde copy gave the amazed Anbu instructor a cunning grin. As the clone struck out with its water Swiss Army knife, Naruto remarked, He must be floored that I was able to think up something so handy. The Black Ops teacher easily avoided the seemingly innocuous mass of water, which was probably for the best because, at its current density and surface tension, it was able to dent the tree trunk behind him, which was almost a century old. Iruka had no further motivation to avoid the quickly changing mass of water after that. Iruka concluded, this is truly an inspired jutsu, as he quickly avoided an aqua mallet and a water whip. According to the Anbu's deductions, the user's subpar control was the only thing preventing the technique from transforming. But before a very irate Anko showed up, the Chunin Anbu realized, from the looks of it, that doesn't seem to be too much of a problem. Before focusing on the anxious-looking Naruto, Anko destroyed almost half of Naruto's current Kage Bunshin reserves with snake hisses and flying kunai. Anko didn't care whether it was the original's clever attempt at deception or a clone's obvious attempt to attract attention to itself. Squeezing the blonde genin blue and teaching him what it meant to fuck Mitarashi Anko was all that mattered. Given that he was being constricted by pythons that were forcing his breath out of his lungs, the question, "How do you feel, Gaki?" was rhetorical. Naruto was able to wheeze out, as fresh as a daisy, as the area was obscured by a waterfall of flower petals. Naruto used a quick substitution jutsu that was disguised as a flower explosion to break into the scarlet-eyed woman's jutsu and get out of Anko's grasp by tapping into Kurenai's genjutsu molding. Nai-chan cut the fucking genjutsu. Kurenai and Naruto were once more made visible to the public after Anko's irate demand was satisfied. The clone was wearing the same joyful expression as the last clone that went Hiroshima on Anko's ass, but Naruto's revealed identity was actually the one Kurenai was pursuing. The enraged snake Kunoichi roared, "Oh no, you don't," and used a kunai to slap a containment seal on the clone's forehead. Through kunai that Anko had thrown with too much force, the containment seal, which isolated and bound the exploding clone's concussive and fiery forces, kept sailing in the direction of the original Naruto. The aforementioned blonde swiftly reached under his cloak for two scrolls and, with a quick motion, unrolled them in front of him. The primed containment seal turned explosive note was now in the center of the second scroll, while the first only had the symbol for water written on it. As the purple-haired Kunoichi gradually pieced together what her blonde disciple was doing, Iruka and Kurenai watched Anko in bewilderment from across the battlefield. "What could you be planning, brat?" A prepared water scroll and an impromptu explosive note. Before authorizing her allies to charge in, the Kunoichi pondered. Seals was always a complex matter, and it was generally accepted that unless one was certain of the result, one should never charge a fuinjutsu user. And regrettably, Anko wasn't absolutely certain. In quick succession, the two scrolls that were now lying crossed on top of each other were unsealed. Before the delay concussion seal pushed the resulting steam in all directions, the heat from the released fire was instantly dosed by water that had been stored beforehand. The snake seal mistress swore and destroyed an attacking clone, saying, "Damn, he was making a smokescreen." The aforementioned blonde capitalized on the confusion caused by Naruto's inventive use of seals in a number of ways, the first of which was the creation of his favorite doppelgangers. However, Naruto had perfect sonar-like vision as he watched his sensei battle while his sensei methodically destroyed his replica army in complete darkness. His perception-altering genjutsu's gray contour lines depicted the ongoing battle in a visible but disorganized manner. To give himself a pat on the back, Naruto was tempted to call forth a shadow clone even though the jutsu was far from flawless and required a lot of work. "When I'm done with this futon, Kirasan," a severing line of wind chakra sliced through the steamy haze and plowed through the smokescreen and clones alike as the blonde yelled as pride gave way to reason. Doden. Doryuheki. The wind attack was halted cold by the scarred Anbu's preferred earthen defense, but not before suffering significant damage of its own. And that was only at half output, Naruto thought smugly as he examined the deep gouge his attack had removed from his favorite teacher's shield. It took very little calculation to figure out that the severing line would have severed the heads of three of Konoha's best if he had given the attack his full force. As Sensei lowered their guards, Naruto let that thought linger in the back of his mind and released the remaining shadow clones. All three Jonin were utterly impressed with their understudy, and Anko was grudgingly happy that her student finished the test before she had a chance to reprimand him for his bomb stunt. "Do I pass then? If you call annoying the hell out of all three of us with your twisted sense of humor and jutsu creation, then yes." After her friend's snide comment, Kurenai injected, "Don't mind her, Naruto-kun. Anko's just mad because you managed to get one over her." The Kunoichi simply glared daggers at the two, and when she saw that neither of them responded as she had hoped, Anko turned to go, but not before grabbing a certain Anbu to pay for her dango. Iruka. Sensei and Anko, see you later. Hold on, Iruka, what about the jutsu you promised? As he chased after the vanishing pair, Naruto yelled, and Kurenai actually managed to laugh at the blonde's immature response, which stood in stark contrast to his tactical prowess. The red-eyed woman whispered, "Never change Naruto-kun," and vanished from the clearing as well. 2 weeks and nothing has happened. As he tried to replicate his father's renowned offensive strategy, Naruto screamed out loud. Unfortunately, the advancements that 100 clones could make in a day only went so far, and the Rasengan was still unfinished. Have patience, Naruto. Just as Konoha wasn't created overnight, neither was the jutsu you're attempting to learn. As Naruto concentrated entirely on the air-filled balloon in his hands, Kyuubi reminded him that, in keeping with the jutsu's description, the air balloon was by far the most difficult step in learning the Rasengan, primarily because Naruto could easily control his excessive power. I understand, but I feel like I've hit a brick wall after all of this work. Other than that, everything is coming together. I've gotten better at genjutsu, ninjutsu, and even medical jutsu. Do you think I might not be able to perform this jutsu right now? As the whirling energy in his hands subsided within its elastic shell, Naruto posed the question. The Rasengan is almost impossible in my opinion. Despite my initial surprise, I believe the entire situation is comparable to the one involving your Shuki ability. As usual, Kyuubi's explanation helped him feel better. You just need to take it slow, and in time it will all work out. Naruto's features took on a contemplative frown when the poisonous abilities were mentioned. Naruto deadpanned, smirking at the slack vixen. So what you're saying is that you don't exactly why this is happening to me, and if I heard correctly your meddling Yuki is probably the cause of it, he said. Kyuubi muttered playfully, such a harsh accusation Naruto-kun. I'm beginning to believe that you don't trust me, as the blonde cursed in exasperation. Don't call me that Kasu-chan, scum. As I told you, regarding the trust issue, is being outside a sufficient solution? Happy that he had managed to remove the smirk from Kyuubi's stunning face, Naruto shot back. Low blow fish. Paste, but I figure I can let it slide seeing as my O.So. Generous warden has let me off on parole. It's Maelstrom for the final time. Damn it, Whirlpool Maelstrom. Why in the world would a parent give their child a fast food side order? Naruto lost another round of verbal sparring after responding loudly. Fish. Paste or Maelstrom, your name is irrelevant when considering your profession consists mainly of slinking around in the shadows, before plotting how to kill your next target. Naruto stayed silent at that point because the reality of shinobi had hit him hard just a month ago when he almost died at the hands of his alleged sensei. The once fantastical dream of rescuing princesses and rising to the position of beloved and valiant leader of his mocking village had been permanently tarnished by the knowledge that he could die at any time. That's why he trained so hard, or at least half of it. While self-preservation was a major motivator, Naruto felt that the only way he could protect his friends was to get stronger after witnessing Iruka lying face down in the Uchiha crypt and, more recently, learning about Kyuubi's enigmatic attacker. Sighing at the sudden barrage of information, Kyuubi watched as Naruto resumed his Rasengan training, silently grateful that her safety meant so much to him, as the whirlwind of emotion that was racing through his mind seeped through the empathetic bond he shared with his ward. Before heading out to train herself, the fox mistress said, I certainly hope that this village will come to see that. Naruto, it's time. You are aware of what needs to be done. That he did, but what seemed like an impossible task ought to have been completed on the first day. Tenchi's last test would be to simply pull his blade out of its sheath, demonstrating his competence as a Namikaze swordsman. Easier said than done, moaned Naruto as he gazed into the lacquer sheath's flaming finish, forcing his eyes to look at the sword that had been draining his chakra for nearly a month. The master swordsmith claimed that the sword had fed enough, and that it was time to discover its true composition. Naruto gripped the handle of his ninjutsu and calmed his mind, pushing his doubt and fear to the back of his mind. However, his calmness of mind did little to calm the storm of emotion he was repressing deep inside, so before he gave in to his frustrations once more, Naruto ripped the handle of the blade fiercely. And to his surprise, a gentle humming greeted his ears once more rather than tearing his arm out of its socket. As he gazed at the humming blade, the cloaked blonde exclaimed, it's singing. The cloudy, pale steel glowed dimly in the room filled with sunlight, but it was still lovely in the young boy's light. Weight, length, balance, this sword is perfect, Naruto said in amazement as he examined the sword more closely. The blade was in perfect condition in every way, from sharpness to polish, which baffled him given that it hadn't been drawn in 13 years. However, before he asked Tenchi about the strangeness, his attention was captured by 3 seals engraved at the base of the ninjutsu's blade. Fire, wind, water. Naruto read from top to bottom, understanding that the 3 elements matched his own elemental alignment. Unconsciously, he willed a little more of his chakra into the shinobi sword, and was not only met with the joyful humming, but also a drastic transformation of the sword itself. The Dato length weapon, which was once only 2.5 feet long, was now as long as a full-fledged Shikudo. Its explosive power was only surpassed by the deathly, sharp aura that hung over the weapon after it had been transformed. That's a weapon, huh? Your chakra actually responded well to the Chuishi, center stone, metal. Yes, it did. Naruto's ninjutsu experienced a transformation that was unlike any of the weapons he had made from the aforementioned material. As Tenchi watched Naruto test the weapon with hesitant hands, he recalled, then again the Yondaime commissioned nearly a fortune to guarantee the ore's purity. However, why did it react at this time? Naruto remarked wearily, I've been trying to draw this thing out of its sheath for almost a month, but every time I almost pulled my arm out of socket in the process, questioning the weapon's dependability if he couldn't draw it successfully. It all comes down to the material used to make the blade. Chuishi is a chakra stone that resembles the ones on the back of your gloves, but it adopts its owner's alignment instead of the wind alignment used by Keizeshi to charge chakra. With a quick glance back at the kanji inscribed on the blade's base, Naruto asked, so you're saying I couldn't draw the blade because the Chuishi ore couldn't draw on my element alignments? If his assumption was correct, then things were beginning to make sense. Yes, in the sense that it couldn't draw on your chakra was because of my authority, which has significantly improved lately, so now that it is stabilized, it would make sense for my chakra to be mirrored. Yes, but you're also missing the fact that you were probably incredibly frustrated during the times you tried to draw the blade in the last couple of weeks. There was only so much a boy's mind could handle, and even those boundaries were pushed to the limit once Naruto received the hour's worth of feedback from his clone's dispersals. Understatement of the year, Naruto added sardonically, recalling the evenings spent studying medicine, jutsu, and seals alongside a pack clones. I can tell by the expression on your face that the answer is yes, and you are undoubtedly already aware of the significant role emotions play in the development and regulation of chakra. Tenchi concluded, admiring the results of his labor. There are new avenues of power now that you've settled, both in body and in mind. Before he could consider his work fully finished, he would have to administer one last test, and he smirked when he realized who the ideal proctor for that exam was. The blade he had labored over for 13 years was now in front of him in all its perfection. Tenten. The blonde next to him was startled by the man's sudden cry. Yes, Dad. The girl's awe of silence in front of Naruto's new blade silenced Tenten's question. What was it that you needed me for? Enchanted by the weapon. Tenten flung the flying dagger at the blonde after calling forth a kunai from a small scroll. Clank. Why in the world was that done? Naruto screamed, fearing that his weapon would be harmed by such a careless blow. Not even a scratch, Tenten said in her daze, referring to Naruto's immaculate ninjutsu and the standard grade weapon she had been using, which now had a deep scar in its spine. Before Tenten unrolled a much larger scroll, Naruto added in awe, just what I was thinking. Then, without a single drop of blood or cloud of smoke, the girl with the bun hair pulled out the most amazing katana he had ever seen. Like his ninjutsu, the curved killer's blade hummed a resonant tune as it cut through the air, only to be stopped by Naruto's sword. The blade's blackened watered steel resembled ripples along its length, dimly reflecting the light shining into the dojo. My mother told me stories about this. What? Only when both blades are of the highest quality can they sing. In the heat of battle, Ka-san told me, her sword and her opponent's sword sang the most beautiful songs for them. This happened only a few times. When Tsukiyoden, Moonlit Night Sky, started singing, I didn't think they were real. In fact, it's singing. Naruto shot Tenchi a sidelong glance at Tenten's declaration, as he was caught between congratulating himself and feeling sorry for the blonde he had just unleashed. Tenchi. Sensei, will it be alright for? Alright. Tenchi quickly added, let your swords continue their song. I'm not going to let Naruto get away with it. Without further ado, Tenten charged forward once more, her darkened blade colliding with Naruto's hazy edge, and after less than a second of contact, the two combatants moved apart, both employing the Ryusuken principles. Their battle was like a raging torrent, and neither allowed the other to move an inch, whether it was through hand or positional changes. As muscle memory rescued him from Tenten's precise sword work once more, Naruto thought, At least this isn't as bad as survival training with Anko. Recalling the grueling training session that could only be described as surviving alone in an enclosed space with the snake mistress and her pets, Naruto suppressed a chilly shiver when he saw the image of Anko superimposed over Tenten. Tenten wouldn't turn out that way, would she? Unfortunately for Naruto, the telltale mark of his pervert was easily noticeable by the bun-haired Kunoichi, who had caught him reading passages of his favorite orange book aloud on multiple occasions. A tiny trickle of blood leaked from Naruto's nose as he imagined Tenten wearing a skin-tight combat mesh and a trench coat. Skirt combination that left little room for imagination. You wouldn't consider anything perverted, would you, Naruto? Is there a right or wrong response to this query? A kunai was only a centimeter away from neutering him after Naruto's hesitant response. The first shot was merely a prelude to the oncoming storm of sharp metal, and Naruto was forced to defend himself against Tenten's righteous rage. Breathlessly, Naruto exclaimed, "Kunai and Kenjutsu at the same time, this is insane," as he broke off another sword fight with Tenten. Unfortunately for the blonde heir, the tanned weapon mistress was able to perform pinpoint accuracy and Kenjutsu in a stunning combination. Each time he attempted to use his Kenjutsu on her, she would counter with her own and then create a merger distance between them that was just big enough for her to throw kunai at him without fear of jutsu of any kind. The blonde was gradually losing ground to the strategy. Notwithstanding his annoyance, Naruto recognized the strength of his great-grandfather's method, which went beyond simply emphasizing the development of a superb swordsman. In actuality, the Ryusuiken allowed the practitioner to move from Kenjutsu into any other aspect of ninja combat with ease by utilizing ambidexterity and an intuitive grasp of the flow of combat. When Naruto realized he was approaching the fight incorrectly, he used a sealless Kawarimi to dodge another wave of kunai before launching a fistful of senbon in retaliation. Tenten quickly used a few of her own projectiles to counter the surprise attack, masking her surprise, only to discover that Naruto was now winning the battle. With a wave of her hand, the blonde exclaimed, "Futon! Bufu," changing the trajectory of the flying daggers back to their master. Tenten was unfazed and attempted to counter with her own projectile after it was redirected, but she soon discovered that Naruto had not relinquished control of his wind jutsu. What should I do now? Tenten considered her options and pondered. Before letting a single kunai nick her shoulder, Tenten muttered to herself, "I could try to beat him in a Kenjutsu battle, but then it'll come down to who has more stamina, me or him. Well, that isn't going to work, so I guess I only have one other option." She drew a single scroll concealed within her clothing, unraveling and smearing her blood along the inside all in one motion. Naruto regretted stopping to check on the weapon wielding girl after she was cut, and even more so for staring as she prepared her technique, even though the cut wasn't deep. As a wave of weapons emerged from the scroll's confines, Naruto added, "Note to self, never let up on Tenten just because she's a girl." Although his initial instinct was to destroy all the weapons with the C-rank ninjutsu Uruka had given him yesterday, he decided against it due to the collateral damage it would cause. Instead, Naruto relied on his Ryusuiken principle training and allowed his control to shift to his Kenjutsu. The girl with the bun hair noticed the subtle but noticeable change as her weapons were either batted aside by his wind jutsu or sliced asunder by the boy's blade. As Naruto continued to hack and bat away the projectiles with increasing speed and fluidity, every step he took, every movement he made, and every ounce of chakra he molded all fell into place as he continued to defend himself, seemingly out of pure instinct. "This can't be happening," he said, but his admission of denial was only painfully true. Tenten, exhausted and on her butt, was simply taken aback by the revelation, having just seen her final technique, albeit one that was still in the process of being developed, beaten and discarded like a used kunai. Tenten looked forward and saw with some satisfaction that Naruto was at least somewhat affected by his stunt. Continued reliance on Futon Bufu and his automated defense took a lot of his energy, but he was still more than capable of fighting compared to Tenten, who used her last attack to drain more than half of her chakra. And the enthusiast for the worn-out weapon was aware of this fact. I won't lose," the tanned Kunoichi exclaimed angrily as her adrenaline surged through her body. Tenten stood up, her heart racing wildly as she felt the world slow down in front of her. She had never felt so powerful and had never seen so clearly. It seemed as though she could hit any target. Regretfully, Naruto was the target of that. With instinct directing her nerve endings to add the proper rotations onto the star so that it flew in an unpredictable arc, Tenten grabbed a shuriken and slung her arm forward. The ninja stars now. Curved flight eluded Naruto's wind jutsu and nearly sliced open the boy's neck before his sword sliced it in two. Naruto glanced at the split shuriken in shock before turning back to Tenten. This isn't good, was the only thought that ran through Naruto's head as he observed the evil smile that had spread across Tenten's face and the protruding veins along her forehead. Naruto's body began to move instantly, guided by his defense against ki detection, but even that was insufficient to stop the bun-haired girl's weapons from taking parabolic flights. When Naruto ducked around a kunai whose path had curved after colliding with another kunai, he pondered, there must be a way to stop this. Naruto, who considered himself to be rather unpredictable, was unsure of how to respond to Tenten's assault. After a lot of wind jutsu and kunai, Naruto discovered that Tenten wasn't using wires, even though it seemed like the blades were possessed. Naruto concluded, even more impressed by Tenten's technique, no, she must somehow be able to read by every move to near utmost details, while at the same time, controlling the arcs of her kunai with such accuracy that they intersect where I'm going to be at a given time. As Naruto felt Tenten's chakra spike once more and her efforts double, he added, not to mention she's had a sudden increase in chakra that's been fueling both her newfound accuracy and prediction abilities. Naruto awkwardly kept dodging, destroying, and deflecting kunai, but as soon as the threats subsided, new ones appeared. The weapon's mistress was now laughing merrily as he continued to pelt the blonde with flying daggers from every angle imaginable. In a moment of panic, Naruto swung a kunai out of shape, and another struck the space between his handle and his ninjutsu's crossguard, causing him to lose control of the weapon. Without a weapon, Naruto raised his hands in a protective stance, anticipating the inevitable decisive blow. However, it never materialized. Naruto Tenten was slumped in her father's arms, her form visible through the gaps in his guard. Despite the weapon clinking in her hands and the blood and perspiration on her body, she was sleeping soundly. She's totally exhausted, Naruto acknowledged, adding that he had outlasted the weapon wielder in spite of his reservations. Naruto looked away from the weary girl and said, Tenchi, sensei, what was that? It's something my late wife possessed but never was able to fully explain. For a while we thought it was just her person reaction to stressful situations, but as she began to have them more often before finally being able to control it, we found out that she had a bloodline limit of her own, Tenchi said with an eerie look in his gaze. Given that Tenchi was still straddling the boundary between reality and his memories, Naruto dared to ask, what's it called? Sagare, sniper spirit. While waiting in the hospital lobby, Naruto wrung his hands once more. Even though he had just taken his medical license board exam, he was more worried about a certain bun-haired kunoichi than about whether he passed or failed. Naruto diagnosed Tenten with mild chakra exhaustion and fatigue 3 hours and 500 medical questions ago. Even though it was a straightforward exercise and he passed his practical section of the board exam, the young, aspiring doctor couldn't help but worry about the girl's future. As his anxiety grew, Naruto vocally concluded, her heart rate was a little over 400 beats per minute and her adrenaline readings were through the roof when we started the examination. And although they quickly feel back into normal parameters, the human body isn't meant to take that sort of stress. Despite his best efforts, Naruto couldn't shake the feeling that the Sagare Tenten he allegedly inherited might be doing her more harm than good. That girl is where? She was only to go to the supply room and pick up some extra gloves and sutures. She hasn't been seen for 30 minutes, a rather irate doctor said from the other side of the hallway. She's most likely sleeping. The head nurse responded, she has been working double shifts for 3 days straight. The middle-aged woman found it difficult to sympathize with her colleague because he was the one who created the schedules, even though it was extremely unprofessional and occasionally fatal to be late for work. The nurse rolled her eyes, but the doctor either missed it or ignored it entirely. Okay, I'll find someone else to get it, he said. The doctor didn't have to finish his request because the blonde was already halfway down the hallway heading to the hospital's storage room. Hey Naruto, do you, he said. Naruto found that the long journey to the hospital's basement, where the storage room was situated, was exactly what he needed to distract himself from his hospitalized friend. Uncertain whether to feel grateful or anxious about finishing the application portion of his test first, Naruto pondered, I wonder how Hinata, Chan and Choji are doing on their exams. But before he could think about it any further, his enhanced senses told him that he wasn't alone in the hospital cellar. Tensing up a little, Naruto swiftly looked around his dim surroundings and cursed that he had left all of his weapons at Tenchi's house. Naruto focused on the intruder and reasoned, well, this is a hospital. It's only a nurse, Naruto exclaimed, breathing a sigh of relief, and he was grateful inside that the nurse wasn't some kind of foreign invader because, in the event of a fight, his surroundings would have restricted him to using only his taijutsu, genjutsu, and kage bunshin technique. Naruto's relief was short. lived, though, as the nurse didn't even acknowledge his presence. Upon closer inspection, Naruto discovered that the young woman was in a trance of some kind, which immediately put him back on high alert as he searched for any hidden chakra signatures in his surroundings. Worry started to creep deeper into Naruto's thoughts. That's strange, Genjutsu normally dissipate once the caster has left the area. If he was dealing with someone who could cast remote Genjutsu, he was probably in over his head. Thinking fast, Naruto conjured up a smokeless, soundless shadow clone with the mental command to inform the Hokage of his discovery. After the clone left the basement, Naruto returned his focus to the walking nurse before grudgingly following her. The hypnotized nurse quickly stopped at the end of the hallway, so the blonde didn't have to go very far. The heroic tagalong got his answer when the nurse appeared to phase through the solid concrete. Naruto asked suspiciously, "Wasn't there a door there?" But every time he tried to remember whether or not his suspicions were correct, he was met with a fuzzy memory followed by a blank. Naruto summoned another shadow clone and told his doppelganger to do the same before steeling himself may lie on the other side of the wall. Regretfully, nothing could have prepared him for what he witnessed on the opposite side. "Is Uchiha Makoto still living?" the Naruto clone exclaimed, "Miko-chan?" in the middle of a sentence, further confusing the already perplexing story. "Naruto, please tell me why this is so important," the Hokage said in a frustrated tone. Despite his grandfatherly demeanor and seemingly limitless patience, he was sure to get angry if he interrupted Sarutobi Hiruzen during his Icha time. With a humorous wave of his arms, Naruto exclaimed, "Miko-chan is alive, she's in the hospital basement." Hiruzen said, "Naruto, who is Miko-chan?" in a weary tone. To be fair, the role of Hokage was quite demanding, and even though Sarutobi made it a point to regularly check in on Naruto, he was in no way able to learn the humorous moniker Naruto had come up with for the Uchiha clan matriarch. Before scattering, the clone said, "You know Sasuke's mom, Uchiha Makoto," as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. The Hokage could only watch in disbelief. His mind whirled with dozens of potential outcomes before he finally sighed wearily, realizing that this development would only lead to one. A whole lot of paperwork. As Makoto washed the last of the dishes from the evening meal, she concluded that the best part of the day was the fading of twilight. The bustle of the day seemed to finally subside, allowing one to genuinely enjoy life's little pleasures. Which, for the clan's matriarch, was providing for her family. Sasuke, Itachi, Fugaku. Makoto scowled slightly at the idea. Sasuke, her youngest child, missed dinner, which is strange given how much he wanted his father to approve of him. Report after report over the years confirmed that her youngest would be the top rookie in his graduating class, but her maternal instinct told her that her youngest still tried to make his father proud. As a result, that ambition waned. Fugaku, her husband and their father, was a proud man. Even after 17 years of marriage, she was still able to admit that she wasn't in love with him, despite the fact that she loved his drive and other qualities. As with all previous marriages between the Uchiha head and lady, theirs was arranged by the council, so it wasn't really his fault. The purpose of bringing together the strongest male and female Sharingan bearers was to increase the likelihood that their offspring would possess the same strength. Her eldest was probably going to follow in the ancient tradition that her paternal great-grandmother had followed before her. The greatest prodigy to grace the Uchiha since Uchiha Madara's birth and death was unquestionably Itachi, her eldest. Makoto couldn't help but compare her aristocratic son's eyes to the dark Konoha sky as she gazed into the night. Since her baby was finally growing up and would surely become more difficult to read, she wanted to put an end to it. But every time she gazed into her son's eyes and saw nothing, that aspect of her was silenced. When the boy's eyes were constantly staring and all-consuming, one could mistake them for the abyss. There was no acknowledgement, no recognition, and not even a glimmer of warmth. As she finished putting away the last of the dishes, Makoto tried to tell herself, no, Itachi is just growing up, and with the stress of being an Anbu, no wonder he looks so haunted. The dark-haired beauty was pleased to see that everything was tidy and that the final tasks of the day had been finished, as she scanned the area for any more mess. Makoto hummed a gentle melody as she made her way to her quarters, relishing the uncommon quiet that had descended upon the compound. The Uchiha lady assumed that Fugaku was having another of his secret meetings, and paid little attention to the odd occurrence. Recalling the digressions of the Uchiha Council, Makoto thought bitterly, hopefully Fugaku could talk some sense into those old fools. The Hokage is a heartless idiot. Konoha would enter an era of unimaginable greatness under the leadership of the Uchiha. Recalling some of the more impassioned remarks made during the meetings, the woman pondered. The entire procession left her with a sour taste in her mouth, and she began to question whether her clan's arrogance had finally reached its zenith. Betrayal, war, retaliation. Makoto was aware that if the Elder's schemes were to succeed, those would be the results. She had experienced all three on many occasions, and when she put her mantle as Konoha's Genjutsu mistress to rest, she vowed never to allow her kids to go through what she had. Makoto went into her bedroom, sensing her husband's presence, determined to see that this nonsense was finally put to rest. Fugaku, we need to. Itachi, Okawa-san. Just as Itachi slashed his blade through his father's chest, cutting the heart in one stroke, Makoto came into the room. Her son's cry, barely audible above a whisper, was so filled with regret that it almost proved to her that what she was witnessing was real, even though the scene was so bizarre that her mind refused to accept it as fact. The Uchiha lady attacked instinctively and flew to her lord, her hands fading into intricate symbols at every turn, her eyes burning red. Immediately, Itachi's senses were assaulted by a bewildering array of effects. His nerves screamed as though they had been set on fire, sounds and smells were amplified, and sights were inverted. Even after almost 13 years of inactive duty, it became frighteningly clear that one could understand why Makoto was formerly referred to as Konoha's Genjutsu mistress. However, during that time, her abilities waned, and her son now overshadowed her former peak. Itachi whispered bitterly, Okawa-san, I really wish it could have been different, as he stabbed his mother. As Itachi's blade lodged in her chest, neatly severing her spine and sealing her Simon, life gate. 1. The woman could only watch in disbelief. Makoto let out a bloody cough and looked at her oldest again, discovering that his Sharingan had advanced to the next level and was now shaped like the fabled Mangekyo Sharingan. As the effects of Shisui's death from all those years ago became apparent, a wave of sadness passed through her body. After the stoic Uchiha said softly, Okawa-san, you are now in the world of my Tsukuyomi, Moon Reader. 2. You will now sleep, perchance dream, until your wounds are healed. Makoto suddenly noticed that her eyelids were extremely heavy. When his blade slid cleanly out of her chest and her world twisted violently, Makoto's attempt to muster the strength to call out her eldest's name was cut short. Itachi. Shit's she waking up, at this rate she'll bleed out if we don't calm her down. Damn it, we need that sedative now, and Makoto passed out once more. Beep, beep, beep. The first thing Makoto noticed when she woke up from her sleep was the steady rhythm of the EKG machine. The second was that she was no longer fighting for her life in the Uchiha complex, fighting for the survival of her clan and Sasuke. Sasuke, the woman whispered, opening her eyes. Then Sasuke quickly found his mother's hand in a comforting gesture and whispered softly, Easy Okawa-san. Everything is alright. You're safe, Itachi's gone. Sasuke was internally conflicted between anger and joy over his mother's return and resentment toward Itachi for putting her in this state. Naruto interrupted, directing Makoto's focus from her son to the other people in the room. Sasuke is right, Miko-chan. Most of your wounds may be healed, however your body is still incredibly weak from the coma, Naruto said. Naruto, who was noticeably taller and leaner than before, stood behind Sasuke with a worried expression on his face. The Hokage stood by the blonde's side, his lips pressed into a thin line that expressed his disapproval of the current circumstance. Last but not least was Maeda, who was wearing his well-known green jumpsuit but had an unusually intense gaze that fixed itself firmly on the wounded woman. Makoto was clearly surprised, but the taijutsu master spoke up before she could question his presence. Guy said in a steady, if a little hesitant, voice, I've been minding young Sasuke here, ever since he was released from therapy. His anger was great and I hoped that my teachings would channel his rage into a constructive outlet. Despite Sasuke's mounting annoyance with the young Uchiha heir, Guy maintained eye contact with Makoto while placing a rough hand on his head. Sasuke observed a noticeable shift in his sensei's customary eccentric antics, but he was not overly happy with the man for disclosing his personal burden. The man was clearly bothered by something. Sasuke glanced at his mother, noticing that something was strange about her presence as well. It seemed as though her normally calm demeanor had been disturbed, but Sasuke reasoned that it couldn't be. After her oldest attempted to kill her, she had just woken up from a month-long coma. But Sasuke's mother's reaction distracted him from his murderous thoughts. Makoto said in a calm, neutral tone, well then you have my thanks, Maeda-san. Is there anything that the Uchiha clan can do to repay you? No, Uchiha-san, although I do ask that I be allowed to continue my training with young Sasuke here. He has shown much progress in these few weeks and I think that his training with me has helped him better channel his emotions. As long as Sasuke has no objections, then yes, the Uchiha clan would be honored to have a master such as yourself instruct one of our own. To the chagrin of his pupil, Guy said, "Thank you Uchiha-san, may your recovery be swift and youthful," and left with his customary gusto. Makoto's expression changed slightly as the Hokage dismissed her son and former charge, but she was still grinning at the antics of the two. In his most wise, grandfatherly voice, the Hokage remarked, "It will only be a few moments, young ones. Uchiha-san and I have much to discuss about the events that have transpired." Both of them had a keen awareness of the situation and the severity it brought to the village, so they left with little protest. The gloomy mask of the renowned professor of the leaf replaced the Hokage's grandfatherly expression, which had vanished with them. Too much had been left in ruins by the aftermath of the massacre. The standing army of the village was in ruins, the orphanages were overrun with young, traumatized patients, and an internal faction committed genocide without his consent. With Makoto present, Hiruzen intended to restore his authority over the village, which he could sense was eroding. With the wheels of his genius already turning, the Hokage said, "Uchiha-san, I have a proposition for you. Listen, Dobi, I don't know how much you know about what happened, but realize this. The Itachi that I knew, was a lie. One that was made up as a cover for a heartless murderer. A murderer I intend to kill myself," Sasuke murmured gravely. Realizing that it wouldn't be wise to reveal to someone as unstable as Sasuke that the village's leaders had clandestinely labeled his clan traitors, Naruto suppressed his first reaction. Or that the Itachi's plan to put his relatives to death might have been influenced by the Hokage's advisors. It was all conjecture, but based on what Naruto had read in the mission report, it seemed unlikely that Itachi had gone too far. Returning to the current circumstance, Naruto saw that a delicate touch was necessary. If he doesn't, he might wind up pushing Sasuke too far. Naruto responded in his typical tone, "Okay, but do you really think that Itachi could really act that well for all those years?" Sasuke was surprised. He hadn't anticipated Naruto to defend his brother, especially in such a casual manner, but he had anticipated a reluctant acceptance or perhaps a request to help him in his quest. Darkly, Sasuke shot back, "Yes, I do. I witnessed him do it with my own eyes." Itachi's genjutsu power allowed him to witness the massacre, but he forgot, Naruto recalled, kicking himself for his recklessness. "I know, but he is a ninja, one of the best according to World. Are you saying that I won't be able to kill him?" Sasuke snapped, drawing the attention of some hospital professionals who were still there. Naruto sent a comforting look to one of the especially upset nurses and escorted an enraged Sasuke into a more private area. "Look, I know what you're feeling right now, but you can't go around yelling at the top of your lungs. How could you possibly understand what I'm?" Naruto said, "Because I was there that night," as he slammed the mischievous Uchiha into the wall. With his hands raised in a non-aggressive gesture, Naruto retreated from Sasuke after realizing that he had used a little more force than was necessary. Sasuke also settled down, partly out of curiosity and partly because he understood that it didn't convey a positive message to act insane after your brother killed almost every member of his family. "I had been tricked earlier in the evening by Mizuki, who might I add was a traitor, and wound up hiding in the Uchiha library. After stumbling upon some hidden clan catacomb, Mizuki managed to catch up to me, attack me, and nearly kill me as well as Iruka Sensei before some complications arose," Naruto said. Sasuke listened carefully to Naruto's story, astonished that the blonde also experienced some of the same things, and he could tell from Naruto's pauses and tone shifts that much more had occurred. Sasuke muttered angrily, "Interesting story, but what does that have to do with my situation?" Mizuki's autopsy revealed that trace amounts of foreign chakra were still circulating in his frontal lobe, which is good that he's learning discretion. "All right. Not everyone is dual-trained as a med.nin and genjutsu specialist." Naruto resisted slapping his forehead. The blonde then clarified his claim. "The residual chakra indicates an advanced genjutsu, and the configuration of the chakra implies that it was a Uchiha who cast the genjutsu, which caught Sasuke's eye. Therefore, it might indicate that Itachi was the one who attempted to hypnotize someone else in order to kill you. Given how much time you spent at the complex, I wouldn't be shocked. So, why would he abandon me, or you, for that matter? If he were merely a cold-blooded murderer, why would he spare your mother and every child in the complex? With the rest of the clan lost that night, I'm sure he could have easily killed us if he wanted to," Naruto said, glaring directly into Sasuke's eyes. To measure his capacity, what was that? Even with his enhanced senses, Naruto was unable to fully understand Sasuke's mumble when he asked. "After making me witness everyone's deaths, he told me, and more." Sasuke swore, and over again, that he did all of this to measure his own capacity, and if I wanted to revenge I should run, and hide, and cling to life so that one day I might hate him enough to kill him. His grief and rage increased to almost bearable proportions with each utterance. Bullshit. What were you saying? Sasuke questioned incredulously, almost launching himself at the blonde in a fit of rage. I said nonsense. Naruto mockingly retorted, I don't think Itachi would murder his family, devastate the village, and psychologically harm you. Of all people, just to test his limits. The Avenger's fist hurt like hell, but Naruto's pride wouldn't let him fall, so he turned a hardened glare onto the Uchiha survivor and carried on with his reasoning. That was the straw that broke the camel's back, and Sasuke decked him before Naruto's defenses could follow. I am familiar with Itachi. I've known Itachi for 6 years, and if I can tell you anything, it's that, despite his skill at killing, he detested it, but he would do it to defend his house and the things he valued. I'll call bullshit every time you tell me that he killed everyone he knew and loved in order to gauge his capacity. Unmarried, time. Sasuke's second punch, which carried all of his raw anger and by default almost knocked him out cold, was only filled with confusion and doubt, and even though Naruto smarted a little, it didn't do much to the blonde. Naruto didn't even bother to dodge it. So, what should I do? Did you forget this ever occurred? Fortunately, only Naruto was present to hear Sasuke yelling again by the second question. No, I'm saying that there's more to this than first appears, and that Itachi is the only one with all the answers. Therefore, we ought to concentrate on tracking him and learning the truth about what actually transpired that evening rather than just killing him. What if I was right about what I said? Sasuke questioned in a low, hesitating voice. Naruto took a deep breath and realized that he would have to present him with concrete evidence that contradicted Itachi's apparent motivations before Sasuke would accept his brother's innocence. Unfortunately, the evidence was too classified for Sasuke to hear. The blonde thought, I'll need to take this to a whole nother level if I want to place any doubt in his mind, as he pondered over classified information. I have a question for you, Sasuke. Which tragedy in Konoha's history is the greatest, and is it not the one that occurred a month ago? With a hauntingly low voice, Naruto inquired. Sasuke's face twisted in anger as he believed Naruto was making fun of him in some way. How is that related to anything? Sasuke shot back angrily. Naruto insisted, just answer it, giving the Uchiha a look of immeasurable significance. The Kyuubi attack, Sasuke complained bitterly, knowing that despite his prejudice, the number of fatalities in that one horrible night was more than 10 times greater than his brother's purging of his own clan. I got it all in one. Indeed, the Kyuubi's attack is without a doubt the greatest tragedy to ever affect Konoha. Almost all survivors lost a significant other. The Kyuubi is dead, then, it's not as if it's still alive, and the fourth hasn't exacted revenge for their losses. She, not it, Naruto automatically corrected, but when Sasuke arched an inquisitive eyebrow, he almost kicked himself. But as for your remark, indeed, if the Yondaime had the capacity to murder the best, that would be absolutely true. How? With another look of unknown significance, Naruto said, let me tell you a story, Sasuke, one that I can assure you will answer all of your questions when it's finished. Persuading Sasuke to comply even though it went against his first instinct. A child was born on the night of Konoha's worst tragedy, and like all newborns, he was frail and weak right out of the womb. But unlike most kids, this one wouldn't get the attention and affection of his devoted parents because, regrettably, a giant fox was ruining everything they loved or would come to love. Naruto started, drawing an irritated but inquisitive glance from his companion. Undaunted, Naruto went on with his story. In order to seal the great demon Kyuubi inside the child's developing chakra coils, the child's father, the Yondaime himself, faced the beast while holding his child. You see, Kyuubi can perpetuate chakra to almost an infinite amount, making it impossible to kill creatures with her level of strength. No, sealing her away, which the Yondaime did at the expense of his life, is the only way to defeat her. Smiling slightly, the blonde boy made eye contact with the dark-haired heir before lifting up his shirt. Shocked and a little embarrassed by the blonde's antics, Sasuke was about to react angrily when he noticed that all the humor had been drained from the blonde's face. Naruto paused, which surprised him and made Sasuke lean forward in anticipation of his next words. In order to leave this world with the sole hope that his child would be regarded as a hero and that the village he loved would protect him, he sealed her in the child. But not only was that wish unfulfilled, the mother of the child also died in the Kyuubi's attack. This left that young child to grow up alone in a village where he was both the literal embodiment of the being that had done so and a constant reminder of everything that had been lost. Naruto went on. channeling more and more chakra with each word until the remnants of the seal were visible on his bare stomach. As he studied the ancient symbols with morbid fascination, Sasuke watched in horror. He had been told that the seal and prison of the greatest monster ever existed right in front of his eyes. Naruto wondered how counterintuitive it would be to tell Sasuke that Kyuubi wasn't as evil as he'd made her out to be and that the reason she came was to kill his clan, which happened to be her own children. "Well, that's a story for another time," he said dryly. Sasuke, who was reigning in a shaky hand, fought the impulse to touch the seal because he thought it would be too intrusive of the other male's personal space and instead chose to ask the question that was on his mind the most. "Have you encountered it?" "Yes, I've met her," stated Naruto once more. "How did it go?" The boy asked more questions, wondering how his encounter with Itachi would compare to meeting the Biju leader. Unaware that his response precisely matched Sasuke's description of Itachi, Naruto replied, "Honestly, it's difficult to describe, but if I had to sum it up in 2 words, they'd be amazing and terrifying." Sasuke grunted but otherwise stayed thoughtful, and gradually he realized that Naruto was the only person who truly understood him. Although he was not Itachi's brother, his relationship with the Uchiha was nearly as strong as his relationship with his brother, and it was also obvious that a large portion of the village only saw Naruto as the monster. "He is their Itachi to them." Sasuke, surprisingly, broke the silence with a laugh of all things after a long moment, which began small, like a chuckle to an inside joke, and then grew into full-fledged laughter. The high tension seemed to fade away with each passing second after that realization. "What the hell?" Naruto asked himself nervously, wondering if the young Uchiha might have found the truth too much to handle. As he watched in disbelief, Naruto reluctantly looked at the apparently insane Uchiha, but to his astonishment, Sasuke's eyes were filled with the purest clarity rather than the characteristic gleam of insanity. "No one else receives it except you. No one else gets it except you, the Dobi," Sasuke said in between giggles, completely perplexing the blonde. "Sasuke, what are you?" "Naruto, you are the only one who truly knows how I feel about my brother, father, and mother." To his blonde counterpart's surprise, Sasuke confessed, "I was mad at you for a long time because of that." Sasuke, but after all of this, losing my brother and parents, regaining my mother, hearing your story, I couldn't help but think that you were a brother to me." Naruto was stunned. A brother? The idea was so alien to him that he was genuinely unsure of how to respond. Perhaps this is how it would have felt if my own brother had survived, Naruto thought absently before turning back to face Sasuke, who was standing rigidly and a little defensively, as though he was afraid Naruto would reject the notion that he was like a brother. Naruto smiled and joked, "It's mutual to feel that way, but don't expect me to be your best friend." Sasuke reluctantly returned and said, "Shut up, Dobi," before the two of them quietly left the hospital. "That concludes class. Enjoy your break," Sakura cried out fervently. Sakura had been ordered to take Mizuki's place as the Academy's summer class assistant instructor for the past month. The rationale was straightforward. Sakura had received excellent grades in each of her school years, and with the current chaos in the village and on her team, it would save time and manpower to have her teach a class. But when she learned that she would be teaching the struggling students, what she had assumed would be a simple job became a huge headache, resulting in a slow progress through each lesson and a growing amount of annoyance for the girl. In the wake of her achievement, Sakura developed a newfound respect for Iruka, as what had begun as a prestigious, personal request from the Hokage himself turned into a fierce struggle of wills with a failing group of would-be shinobi. Sakura silently exhaled with relief that the month of teaching annoying little brats was finally over. With Konohamaru among the last to depart, Sakura became suspicious of another prank as the first-year academy students shuffled off, glad that classes were finally over and summer was approaching. After making sure Konohamaru hadn't left any surprises for the janitorial staff, Sakura gathered her reading materials and, proud to say, finished the many texts on top of her responsibilities at the academy. She then headed to the door. Who would have imagined that the Hokage's grandson could be so innocent, so obnoxious, so Naruto? Like, Sakura growled a little at the name, too annoyed with the boy in question to notice that the pranks didn't begin until she had insulted him in front of Konohamaru. Or that before leaving, the boy set up a tripwire. Slip. Thud. A series of unladylike curses filled the air as various books, scrolls, and notes flew off in all directions. Sakura got up and started to gather her strewn about supplies, threatening the young Sarutobi with pain at every step. God. Oh no, Konoha. Maru. When? I understand. Hold on. Of course. He. All. However, a pale, bandaged hand beat her to the last of her fallen notes, and when Sakura followed the appendage up to its owner's face, she was shocked to discover that Sasuke was the one holding the stray paper. Sakura looked shamelessly at the dark-haired teen, noting that a thoughtful frown marred his normally stoic features. With a clearly strained voice, Sasuke demanded, "Uchiha massacre, Sakura, where did you get this?" "Sasuke, I can explain." Naruto interrupted Sakura's impending fangirl outburst by saying, "Sasuke, quit being a bastard. Those have been all over the village. The Hokage released an official statement not too long ago, and Sakura here probably got one soon after." "Don't talk to Sasuke-kun like that," yelled Sakura, slamming her fist habitually at the blonde's head. She was shocked to see that the blonde only missed his face by a few inches. Naruto mockingly said, Temper Sakura, you'll never convince Sasuke here that you're the lady of his dreams if all you do is act like a gorilla when he's around," with a sly smile on his face. The pinkette roared, "Nah. Ru. Too," as she cocked back another haymaker, her eyes flashing dangerously. Without even thinking, Naruto's head instinctively swung past Sakura's fist as his body responded to her ki, shocking her once more. Naruto chimed cheerfully, taking playful pleasure in seeing Sakura torn between hurting him and focusing on Sasuke. Now Sakura, it wouldn't do you case any good if you went about proving my point, but before you attempt to pummel me again, just know Sasuke's been waiting to give you back your scroll for a while now," he said. To the preteen's chagrin and Naruto's laughter, the latter prevailed, and Sakura immediately turned her focus back to the dark-haired survivor. Sasuke reluctantly complied with Naruto's declaration and returned the scroll to the girl, who accepted it with a heartfelt apology. Without saying anything more, he then went to his normal seat. Sakura didn't take the boy's dismissal personally, but she did follow him after squinting her eyes to the side to see Naruto's appearance for the first time. Sakura found herself staring directly into Naruto's chest, rather than the typical tuft of obnoxious bright blonde hair. A chic jumpsuit in burnt orange and black with a menacing, dare I say cool, cloak that hung from the blonde's broadened shoulders and ended just above his ankles replaced the grating neon orange and blue. Sakura wondered hazily if Choji's tirade about Naruto becoming a weapon master was accurate after noticing the black hilt and crossguard peeking over the boy's right shoulder. Sakura gave Naruto a final approving glance before stomping off indignantly, joking, "Hell, him dressing normally is almost too much to take in. She starts by using her eyes to undress me before leaving in a rage. Sakura's definitely a strange one," Naruto said, grinning, before taking a seat himself. As time passed, the three preteens were confined to the overly familiar classroom for the majority of the day. Naruto just sat silently, thinking back on the previous month, seeing no reason to speak to either of his future teammates. His teammates initially failed to notice his silence because Sakura was attempting to have a conversation with Sasuke while the boy tried his best to ignore the girl and instead stared out the window. Sakura's patience with Sasuke was surprisingly short-lived, as she returned her focus to her seemingly dozing teammate after 30 minutes of one-sided conversation. But when she looked more closely, she discovered that her ostensibly dead last teammate was mediating. When did he find out? Sakura pondered incredulously. All of the warning indicators, though, were present right before her eyes. Even and slowed breathing, a dormant chakra, and a detachment from reality. Sakura continued to stare incredulously for a few more moments before someone whispered something to her from behind in a low voice. "You know it's very rude to stare." Sakura almost collided with the roof. In the center of the room stood a silver-haired man wearing the typical shinobi outfit, complete with a chunin flak jacket, a headband over his left eye, and a large orange book in his hand. It was amazing that he managed to enter covertly without any of the genin.to.be noticing because his presence seemed so bizarre. "Yo." The man waved casually at the three. To Sasuke's chagrin, Sakura yelled, "Who the hell are you?" from her new seat directly beneath him. Nevertheless, Sasuke found himself concurring with Sakura, wondering inquisitively how the man was able to slip without anyone noticing. "It's been a long time, Inu-san," Naruto added, abruptly emerging from his reverie. Naruto couldn't help but smile when he remembered the well-known chakra signature. His guardian angel had returned. The man didn't even flinch, which was not surprising, but he was a little taken aback by how easily the boy recognized him. With a fugitive smile emerging behind his mask, the recently dubbed Inu said, "I have no idea what you're talking about." Recognizing the need for discretion, Naruto returned his smile. It would be impossible to be a ninja and go around disclosing the identity of the former Anbu commander. Naruto cheerfully added, Oh, my mistake then, I was almost sure I recognized you, implying that he was amused by his teammates' perplexed looks while also hinting at his own abilities. The two glanced back and forth between the intruder and their teammate, wondering what kind of conversation they were being left out of, but they were unable to follow the conversation. The blonde was turning out to be the most unexpected ninja ever, and the man couldn't help but laugh to himself. As he considered teaching the blonde tracking, Inu pondered, I doubt he's learned the finer points of tracker yet. Perhaps it's because of that chakra and ki suppressing technique he used all those years ago. Although it was a challenging field, the rewards of being a sensor type made the effort worthwhile if one could master it. Before closing his book, the man continued, and based on his records, he'll probably master this along with everything else he's learning. Prior to disappearing in a shunshin, the Jonin beckoned the three to follow him to the rooftop. Team 7, I am your new sensei Hitaki Kakashi, and as far as first impressions go, I think I may like you three, he said. There was a tense silence as the genin walked obediently toward the rooftop. Sakura took a deep breath before capturing Naruto's attention with a fugitive glance. The girl stumbled over the words, Naruto-kun, unsure whether to add the honorific. Naruto took notice of that. Yes? The blonde asked, raising an eyebrow. How do you know Kakashi, sensei so well? To his credit, Naruto didn't laugh out loud right away, but it was funny to watch the girl who once rejected the idea of speaking to him try to win him over so he would reveal his secrets. Naruto replied with a cluck of his tongue, now that's not very polite, Sakura. You heard Kakashi. Sensei say we haven't met before, since one's Anbu persona was a completely distinct entity from one's shinobi or civilian egos, he was technically speaking the truth. The pinkette claimed, Naruto, I'm not stupid, I know you know that there's more to the story than you're telling. Now tell me what's going on. She was oblivious to the extent to which she had been influenced by Ino's controlling and gossipy demeanor. Regretfully, Naruto didn't particularly like either of those characteristics at the time. But the blonde patiently ignored the kunoichi's request and just walked right by her without saying anything. When Team 7 finally made it to the rooftop, Sakura, who was shocked at being ignored, by Naruto of all people, quickly followed the blonde as she muttered murderous things in a low voice. From behind his book, Kakashi muttered, Oi, took you three long enough, and seeing as we don't have much time, let's just skip to the introductions, ignoring the glances he was getting from each of his three genin. Why? What? Sakura was unable to comprehend how the man could have the audacity to voice his displeasure when he was more than 2 hours late for their brief meeting. Sasuke grinned and said, shouldn't the sensei lead the way? Which, regrettably for him, made Sakura swoon. Kakashi responded, ah, you are correct, my cute little genin, clearly grating the moody Avenger even more. The Jonin deadpanned, never taking his eyes off his book, my name is Hitaki Kakashi. I like a lot of things. Dislike even more, have a lot of hobbies, and my dreams are a bit too much for my cute lil genin. In a rare moment of unity, the trio thought, we learned absolutely nothing. Kakashi ignored this and just gestured to Naruto to carry on with the introductions. My name is, Naruto said, pausing briefly to remember what the Hokage had said. Naruto-kun, no one can know yet. Although the risk is still too high, perhaps we could come to an agreement if you perform well on the next Chunin exam. Sakura yelled, what a baka, he can't even remember his own name, but was met with silence. Kakashi forewarned Sakura, without even looking at the genin with the pink hair. Naruto said, it's okay, I just got a little distracted, and then he looked at Kakashi. Beneath his mask, the silver-haired man simply grinned, his visible eye crinkling into an inverted smile. With genuine relief that he didn't have to hide his secret from his Jonin sensei, Naruto deduced from the man's expression that he knows. As if you could, humbugged Kakashi, who never raised his head from his book. Was he merely making a remark about his book, or did he read my mind? As he attempted to read Kakashi's face, Naruto pondered. Unfortunately, Kakashi had a very good poker face. Kakashi asked, Naruto if you would, and smiled at the boy as the blonde jolted to attention. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. I like practicing ninjutsu with Kasumi Chan, Medjutsu with Hinata Chan, Kenjutsu with Tenten Chan, Seals with Anko Chan, and Genjutsu with Kurenai Chan. I dislike crows. My hobbies are creating jutsu with Iruka Sensei and learning more about Konoha. And my dream is to be the greatest Hokage ever. Since nobody had the courage to criticize Naruto's dream, the group simply watched in silence. The boy's unadulterated resolve even astounded Sakura. You're up next, Pink, Kakashi said, breaking the awkward silence. To the discomfort of the men in the vicinity, Sakura stated, my name is Haruno Sakura. I dislike Ino.pig and my hobbies include, and dreams are, punctuating each pause with a sharp glance at Sasuke and a few evasive looks at Naruto. Kakashi interrupted again, okay, and then gestured toward Sasuke. After a long pause, Sasuke said, my name is Uchiha Sasuke. I like training, and my mother. Sakura exclaimed, he's so sweet, unintentionally sending a chill up her teammate's back. I dislike that Yamanaka psychiatrist and blondes in general, and my hobbies are avoiding them whenever possible, Sasuke added, giving Naruto a sardonic grin. Take that Ino.pig. Ignoring Sakura's slightly distorted gaze, Sasuke's mood turned especially sinister. And my dream is to find a certain man and make him answer for what he's done. So awesome. Well, that was a little unexpected, Kakashi acknowledged before calling attention to himself once more. Well, now that we all know each other, I think we're ready for the next step of the genin exam. All three of his adorable little genin gave him a disbelieving look, as was to be expected. Now children, I will just be a bit of survival training, so that I may get an accurate gauge of our current skill levels. Sakura said, I thought we were finished with this sort of thing after we graduated from the academy, and she fumed. She was beginning to get annoyed with the silver-haired Jonin and his patronizing remarks. To the surprise of everyone present, Naruto interrupted, saying, and you've already been given our files, so you should know what our current abilities are. Curious about the strange Jonin's reaction to being called out, the blonde's teammates simply watched in silence. True. However, this is a special sort of test, one that can't be accurately replicated in an academy environment full of cute lil genin. .be, Kakashi laughed. Sasuke yelled, what's so funny, from the side. The man's remarks had undoubtedly annoyed Sakura, and it seemed to him that he was underestimating them because he was so amused. Nothing serious. It's just if I tell you, you will probably freak out. Naruto smiled and asked, why's that, sensei? He wasn't nearly as bothered by Kakashi as his teammates were. Because this exam has a 66% failure rate, so I'd advise bringing your best tomorrow. Oh, and make sure not to eat anything. I wouldn't want my cute lil genin .be vomiting blood on your first day, and Kakashi left the room. As they took in what they had been told, the three genin simply sat dumbly. As he turned to face the other two, Naruto recovered first and, in his trademark gratingly ostentatious manner, leapt to his feet. Naruto smiled, attempting to instill confidence in his gloomy teammates. Well, you heard the man. Just one more test before we become genin, and I don't know about you, but I'm not going to let some 66% failure rate scare me out of my dream, Naruto said. I have contagious charisma, I can assert myself in a leadership role, and I can definitely give a great speech. As he watched his teammates' faces gradually change, the blonde boasted, this Hokage thing, too easy. But their response wasn't what he had anticipated. Sasuke interrupted haltingly, we don't even know where the test is being held, Dobi, and then turned to walk away. After giving Naruto a single, neutral glance, Sakura hurried after the Uchiha, probably to pressure him into going on some kind of date. Perhaps this will be more difficult than I anticipated. The door of her family's shop opened, and a weary Tenten automatically chimed, hi, welcome to Higarashi's, how may I help you? She recognized the group right away as the new genin rookies, not just any rookies, but the teams of Neji's cousin and the Hokage's son. Asuma waved lazily back, we're fine for now, but well ready soon, and then let genin wander around the store. As expected, Kiba pulled Shino and Hinata in one direction while Ino pulled Choji and Shikamaru in another. The Jonin chuckled and thought, those two are like bull in a china shop, before focusing on his companion. Asuma lit another of his cancer sticks and said, I heard Kakashi finally went and got his team, puzzled. Kurenai, his companion, furrowed her nose in disgust. Today, it was his fifth. The red-eyed beauty curtly remarked, it's about time. From what I've heard, all three have been ready for 2 weeks now, before using a small genjutsu on the stern Sarutobi. Then Asuma sighed in satisfaction. Maybe, but then again, knowing Kakashi, there's probably some other reason it took him so long to retrieve them, she said. Endorphins were released by the genjutsu she had used, and while he was in a state of temporary euphoria, she grabbed the cigarette out of his mouth and threw it into an ashtray nearby. Hey. Oh, stop. You already admitted that the genjutsu high was better than the smoke induced one. And frankly, this way you don't seem nearly as disgusting as before, Kurenai joked, much to her larger companion's amusement. Asuma shot back, making his girlfriend flush. You got me. but then again maybe I just wanted to argue with you so I can see that cute scowl you make when you're mad, he said. When Ino interrupted, both Jonin were embarrassed. We're ready Asuma. Sensei, Ino said. To his astonishment, Ino returned with a rare Shikomizu umbrella combination rather than the long-range weapons he had anticipated. What was even more unexpected was the cost. Asuma exclaimed, 10,000 ryo. Only to discover that his financial difficulties were only getting started. With a sheepish smile, Choji reluctantly took the stage and offered his selection, a Sansatsukan or three-piece staff. Asuma was once again astounded by the cost, and Shikamaru behind him merely muttered something incoherently. As his sensei gave him a pathetic glance, the slothful genin said, better get used to it Asuma. Sensei, because from what Kiba told me you're going to be paying for Team 8 as well. A pair of clawed knuckle-dusters and a kasari Gama appeared alongside the young shadow user's trench knives, as if Kiba and Shino had been cued. Asuma looked at Kurenai in horror, pleading, but Kurenai just glared at him indifferently. Kurenai shot back, her glare getting sharper as she remembered the conditions of their little bet. Don't try to back out of our agreement now. You're the one who suggested paying for anything if you lost our bet, she said. Asuma flinched a little, thinking that perhaps he should have thought twice before asking Kurenai to pose for Shinobi Monthly's swimsuit issue. He reasoned that she couldn't have been that angry because the genjutsu she had used on him when he asked wasn't all that bad compared to the ones she had used during their spar. On the other hand, she might have become enraged after being thrown nude in a cell full of hostile prisoners. With hesitation, Asuma ventured, but isn't this a bit extremely? It was an error. Kurenai's hands twitched at the barely controlled urge to bring a particularly vindictive genjutsu to life as she snapped. Really in objectifying me to fuel you and the rest of male population's testosterone-driven ego, isn't? Asuma faced an overconfident Tenchi and accepted his fate, knowing that any more argument would only result in him being placed in a genjutsu. I see that one's got you trained already. You know I'm going to enjoy retelling this tale to all your friends when they come in, right? Oh shut up you old bastard, look on the bright side isn't not like you can't afford this, and women love a man with a big bank account. Asuma said gravely, Kurenai's not like that, slicing at Tenchi's lighthearted demeanor. Although the young Sarutobi's money was never sought after by the red-eyed genjutsu mistress, it was impossible to date or even have an intimate relationship with him without being aware of how wealthy he was. For context, Asuma was the only son of the current Hokage still alive, which made him a prime target for daimyo and other political strategists who wanted to use him to curry favor with his father. That's not to say, though, that he got his current wealth from gifts alone. He was ranked among the 10 wealthiest people in Konoha because of his service as one of the Fire Daimyo's 12 guardians and his ability to win the man's gratitude. All of that, unfortunately for Asuma, only served to heighten the humor of Tenchi's subsequent comments. The giant of a man laughed at his friend's expense and added, oh I know, and you doing this to yourself is what makes it all the more funny. Hinata and Tenten were idly chatting across the room, partly because the younger girl was Neji's cousin, but mostly because Hinata had taken to carrying the twin Sai with her everywhere she went. So the last wielder was your mother, now I'm really honored you let me hold them. It's alright Tenten-san. However, Tenten continued to wield the weapons in her hand, so Hinata's words were ignored. As expected, Tenten had an impeccable sense of quality, and in a matter of seconds, she recognized that the heirlooms were still in perfect balance and immaculate condition despite their age. Tenten examined the weapons critically, pointing out the numerous seals that appeared to be woven into the gleaming steel. The seals overlapped into intricate arrays that were literally imbued to the core of the blade, indicating that whoever made this weapon must have inscribed them while smelting it. Tenten gently cradled the cool metal of the weapons, offering the handles back to their owner, noting that the craftsmanship was on par with her own Tsukiyoden. The twin Sai were dutifully taken by Hinata, who then skillfully sheathed them in the twin carries that hung from the back of her belt. Tenten, impressed by the girl's skill, raised an eyebrow in surprise at the display. The girl with the bun hair thought, she is a Hyuga after all, but then she had an epiphany. Hinata blushed hotly at the compliment, even though Tenten's statement was merely an innocent one. Wow Hinata, you're pretty go with those things, you must practice with them a lot, Tenten said. In an attempt to minimize her accomplishments and conceal the fact that Tenten's own teammate didn't think highly of her, Hinata added, I try to, but nay, I mean many believe that a Hyuga shouldn't have to rely on a weapon if they still have their Juken as a means of defense. Sadly for Hinata, Tenten noticed both. She was caught between silently applauding the once slip of a girl and yelling at her occasionally jackass cousin. Tenten made the risky pledge, "I'll have to remind Neji of that next time we spar." But when an even more luring idea struck her, she broke her mental promise to reintroduce Neji to Mr. Pointy, also known as Tsukioden, and his merry band of sharp and deadly miscreants. "You know, Hinata, you're the first rookie I've seen who's actually got some experience with a specialized weapon, and while I'm no expert, I'm not too bad with some of the more exotic armaments we ninja use. So I was thinking maybe we should hang out sometime, and maybe get a few spars in, that way we help each other get better," Tenten suggested, only to discover that the girl was prepared to collapse. Although she is not nearly as bad as she was prior to her brief chat with Uzumaki Kasumi, Hinata has never really been asked to hang out. She practiced with her teammates and studied medicine with Naruto and Choji, but both of those were centered around their desire to get stronger. Now, though, there was someone who was prepared to spend time with her merely for the sake of it. For the young heiress, it was nearly too much. Hinata said, "I would love to Tenten-san," and bowed slightly in response. Tenten complained, but the pale girl blushed even more. "Wow, that's easier there, no need to be so formal, Hinata. I'm your friend, not some business associate," Tenten said. To her dismay, Hinata said, "All right, Tenten-sa, Ten-chan," automatically. Tenten added, regretting that she had forgotten about her next assignment, "Yes, that's much better. Unfortunately though, we won't be able to do anything until I return from our next mission. Guy Sensei said something about a vanguard job coming up. It's alright, my team and I will be very busy soon as well. Kurenai Sensei wanted to focus more on our training to get us ready for the upcoming Chunin exam." To the girl's dismay, Tenten praised the Hyuga, saying, "Oh, looking at the Chunin exams already? I guess I won't be able to call you a rookie for much longer then, will I?" In an attempt to deflect attention from herself, Hinata questioned, "So what exactly is your mission?" Tenten replied, "We're protecting some daimyo in Wave Country, oblivious to the danger that would follow." As he watched his team from a nearby tree, Kakashi thought, 627, very few minutes early. His years as Anbu's top assassin and eventual commander taught him how to blend in with the background, even though normally all three genin should have been able to spot him. This essentially meant reducing his chakra to almost undetectable levels and using what little was left to conceal his breathing, heartbeat, and scent from people over a meter away. It goes without saying that his adorable little cousin was unaware of his presence. Kakashi considered returning to the Memorial Stone, but he decided against it in order to gain a better understanding of how his team would function without him physically being there. To his astonishment, despite what their profiles would indicate, Naruto and Sasuke did not butt heads right away. Despite the jabs that were exchanged back and forth, Kakashi discovered that there was a mutual understanding, almost kinship, radiating between the two. Kakashi briefly allowed himself to imagine that their teasing was what he and Obito would have done if he had lived. Then reality set in, and Kakashi smiled wistfully as he lightly traced a finger over his protector. Na.ru.to. Kakashi's mood was lifted by the pinkette's cry of rage, and he briefly questioned whether any preteen girl could have such a violent outburst due to a chemical imbalance. However, Naruto did quote a passage from Icha Paradise to her, and according to the Kunoichi's Guild to Pervert Handling, which was written by Sanin Senju Tsunade herself, Sakura had every right to be violent with him on account of him attacking her. Although I do wonder, Kakashi rambled before concluding that the train was a bit too near his prized Icha to be discussing one of his pupils. He's not thinking about some creepy pedo fantasy. He's thinking about puberty and how it might or might not affect Sakura. To the mild amusement of Kakashi, Naruto was not even close to being beaten. In fact, the boy emerged from the battle unscathed. His technique? Focus all the criticism on Sasuke, or more specifically, the fact that he also read the series. When Sakura struck the young Uchiha square in the nose before he could react, Kakashi remarked, "Now that was unexpected." This caused Naruto to burst out laughing, which regrettably resulted in him suffering a cruel black eye. As he observed Naruto's and Sasuke's injuries using a reasonably sophisticated medical technique, Kakashi reflected, "And here I thought I'd end up with the classic fangirl, idiot, genius trio." The blonde jumped up and offered to trade techniques with the enraged Kunoichi, surprising the legendary Jonin once more with a smile that would have made Minato proud. Sakura was caught between a strong sense of flattery that he wanted to train with her, her feminine pride telling her that she beat the pervert to a pulp, and her overwhelming embarrassment when she realized that she could not offer any more jutsu than those needed to graduate. But after hearing this, Naruto once again astounded Kakashi by succinctly expressing one of the most significant lessons the Yondaime taught him while he was a member of his team. The bright blonde smiled. That doesn't matter, Sakura. We are a team now, and teammates help one another no matter what, he said. Sasuke agreed with the sentiment and offered to spar with the two while they waited for Kakashi, despite the fact that it was quite annoying. Kakashi noted with a wry smile that he had passed his test before it had even been administered. As he turned to head back home, the ideal thought was already in his head. I guess I'll have to think of a test a bit more suitable for my cute little genin, Kakashi said. Naruto said, they're perfectly healed, as the green light emanating from his chakra vanished from view. After receiving a painful kick to the eye, Sakura sighed in relief upon hearing the news. Even if Sasuke was the one who gave her the black eye, it would undoubtedly hurt her chances of getting along with him. Yo, Kakashi said behind his students, almost sending them all to their deaths from heart attacks. Sakura yelled at the one-eyed Jonin, don't do that, Naruto, and, surprisingly, Sasuke joined in. As he read his book, Kakashi said breezily, I see that my cute little genin have been getting along before my test. Kakashi concluded, but now playtime is over, and closed his book. The three soon-to-be genins had hardly time to catch their breath before Kakashi's murderous intent pulled the air out of their lungs. In an instant, Kakashi had each of his students in his manacles. The cuffs were straightforward, and each academy graduate would have thought the braces were just that if not for the glowing symbol etched into the fabric. Uncharacteristically serious, Kakashi answered any questions the three might have raised without softening the killing intent. You three are now bound together by a range-sensitive chakra weight, which, just as the name implies, manipulates its own weight according to how far apart the three of them are. So with that said, don't go running off in different directions or you may find yourself unable to move worse. The man's attention was diverted to Naruto when he exclaimed, what type of test is this? Air rushed into empty lungs and his teammates felt the effects instantly. How does he manage to tolerate it? Before Kakashi's voice interrupted their thoughts, the two pondered. A simple one. All you three need to do is land a hit on me. One punch, and you all pass. Easy, right? Something three of Konoha's finest genin can achieve even if it's against a jonin. Oh, and you better hurry because you only have until noon to do it. The man then vanished in a puff of smoke, his ki fading away with the last remnants of smoke. Two of the three genin pondered, how can he go from being so unassuming to that intimidating, before turning to face each other. Naruto took the initiative in a tense situation and said, he obviously wants us to work together, although even then I doubt we could do much to him. I agree, however all we have to do is land one punch. That shouldn't be hard considering there are three of us, said Sasuke. The final team member stated, but he is a jonin, the strongest ninja in the village bar the Hokage, and we aren't even genin yet, I doubt he is going to make this easy. Plus we have these things to worry about, drawing attention to the modest bands that were fastened to each of their arms. That is true, but like he said we are three of Konoha's finest and I doubt even a jonin like him can escape combat without getting at least touched, Naruto reasoned. Humph, especially when we have these on our side, Sasuke continued, grinning slightly ferally as two tomo appeared around each pupil and his eyes were gushing blood. Sakura, meanwhile, remained silent because she lacked any significant skills or insightful suggestions to contribute to the discussion. She gritted her teeth, ignoring the sting the thought gave her. I have to have strength for Sasuke-kun. The three then departed in pursuit of their sensei. Team 7, fail. The words were not shouted in rage or spoken in disdain. No, there was a faint undertone of disappointment in the words, which mirrored the inner thoughts of all three of Kakashi's potential genins. With the notorious Uchiha in hand, the renowned jonin stood in front of them in perfect condition, just as he had been when he had left his house in the morning. When there was no response, Kakashi went on, do you have any idea why you failed or am I going to have to spell it out for you? Example 1. All three of you acted as individuals on a team rather than a cohesive working unit. Sure, you exhibited teamwork, but only when it was beneficial to accept help from your teammate, such as when both Naruto and Sasuke rushed in and left Sakura behind when you realized she couldn't keep up with your speed. At that, all three genin winced. Almost all of them were unable to decide which was worse, hearing their flaws mentioned out loud or Kakashi's bored, almost dissatisfied, tone of voice when he expressed them. But the test was to hit you, and Sakura's weakest in taijutsu, so having her along would have been hindrance to our plan, Sasuke explained, much to his female teammates' dismay. True, but I never said you had to physically touch me to pass. You assumed because I said hit that taijutsu was the answer and immediate concluded that Sakura would be unfit for any tactic. For all you know I may have meant ensnare in a genjutsu, as hit, and in that respect both Naruto and Sakura would have been the ideal choices for confronting me, leaving you as unfit for any tactic. All you succeed in proving is that you both severely limited your options as well as illuminate that you can't see underneath the underneath. After that devastating rebuttal, Sakura tried to divert attention from her crush by asking, "What do you mean, Kakashi? Sensei?" Clearly quoting words that had previously been spoken to him, Kakashi recited, "A fool takes everything at face value, while a clever man looks behind the surface to find meaning in every challenge. However, for a shinobi one must look underneath the underneath, because therein lies not only success but also survival." After his lackluster performance, Naruto felt compelled to learn something, so he asked, "Who told you that, sensei?" With a serious expression on his face, Kakashi said, "Originally, the first or second Hokage probably, but the one who told me was my Jonin. Sensei Namikaze Minato, the man who eventually will go on to become the fourth Hokage. Sasuke relied on his own abilities to get through the test, so we didn't look through all our options. I still managed to get close to touching you, and that was without their help. Which should account for something," he said. With a fierce tone, Kakashi said, "Yes, it only goes to show how much further you have to mature as a shinobi before I can even think of allowing you onto my squad," putting an end to any passing thoughts the boy might have had. There was almost a tangible silence between them. Desperate to alter their seemingly inevitable fate, Sakura added, "Then give us another chance, Kakashi. Sensei. I'm sure we can succeed now that we know what we need to work on." "Why should I? Sakura, there are no second chances in the shinobi world, there is only success or death." Naruto yelled, "I refuse to accept that," attracting the Jonin's interested attention. After his harsh reprimand, it appeared for a moment that the boy had nothing more to say, but to the cyclopic Jonin's trained eye, the young boy was reliving the events that made his earlier statement so implausible. Kakashi decided that the boy might have something interesting to say, so he made fun of the blonde. "Well then, care to explain why you deserve a second chance? Or is it that you believe failure and death aren't synonymous?" Naruto said, both, in a whisper that was hardly audible to those around him. The copy nin asked in his typical mocking tone, Naruto said, "On both accounts, you're wrong," as he met the silver-haired Jonin's eyes. "While it is true that we did mess up our first attempt and that more often than not a simple mistake can spell your death in the field, to say that we deserve another chance or even that a failure is equal to death is to say that shinobi can't be, or better yet aren't allowed to be, human." Kakashi retorted, "We aren't. We are shinobi, tools for our Hokage." "Then why do you care so much for village? Would it matter to a tool if he saw his home sacked, or his family and friends killed?" "I refuse to believe, no, I completely reject, the idea that shinobi are just tools. We are just as human as the people we protect, possibly even more so because we put our lives on the line to protect that which we love and cherish," Naruto said with conviction. For Kakashi and the blonde's teammates, Naruto's words resonated because they saw the motivation that would make him the Hokage. When we were given the title of Hokage, he witnessed the same fire that the fourth had. Leaning forward to gaze down at his adorable little genin, Kakashi pondered, very convincing speech, but that still doesn't explain why you should get a second chance," while grinning beneath his mask. Naruto couldn't figure it out. He had 1,000 ideas racing through his mind, but none of them seemed convincing enough to persuade a Jonin, even one as careless as Kakashi. Naruto prayed that one of his teammates had an idea as he shot them a desperate glance. Sasuke just watched in exasperation as Sakura bit her lip nervously. Both lacked a compelling argument, and it began to appear that they would actually fail. Sakura turned her eyes to the ground and thought helplessly, "Sasuke and Naruto have done so much to keep us in this test, I just wish I wasn't so useless." Think. Sakura closed her eyes in concentration and thought, there must be a way to be this guy at his own game. Reflecting on everything the man had said, from the test's guidelines to the jeers he appeared to give out like candy, Sakura looked for a way to get around it. Time, I need more time. Sakura gritted her teeth and bit her lip more deeply. Then she realized. Sakura opened her eyes and couldn't help but smile at the ground beneath her. Then, with barely controlled joy, she turned to her teammates to confirm what she had found. Astonished by Sakura's abrupt shift in attitude, Naruto attempted to inquire about it, but the girl with the pink hair outwitted him. "That wasn't very fair of you, Kakashi. Sensei, calling the test before our time expired." Kakashi teasingly said, "Well, I guess it wasn't the most truthful of strategies, but none of you even questioned my authority or noticed that I used a genjutsu to make it look like it was noon, before giving Sasuke a smiling eye. I even had an almighty Sharingan user fooled." Sasuke bit back his retort angrily. Only a fool would stare straight at the sun, and for a dojutsu practitioner like him, this was especially true because his superior vision would only exacerbate the harm the star would do to his retinas. However, saying this would only come across as immature, something Kakashi would undoubtedly enjoy taunting him about. Fortunately for Sasuke, however, a well-timed tirade diverted Kakashi's focus from him to the blonde rising star by his side. The blonde exclaimed, "We're wasting time. We need to get this guy, and we need to get him now," and used a dozen shadow clones to accentuate her point. With all the skills the boy had developed over the previous month, the group of doppelgangers raced towards Kakashi. His teammates were taken aback by Naruto's use of Gen, Ken, Nin, and Fuinjutsu, which confirmed their suspicions that he was anything but a typical genin. The blonde's skills, however, were no more lethal to an elite jonin like Kakashi than a child's were to a parent. Naruto's abilities were simply that, genin. Kakashi fought off the clones without even looking twice, but when he looked up from his book, he discovered that one of the clone's creators was gone. Before being made aware of the blonde's presence by his enhanced awareness, Kakashi wondered, where did he? Kakashi leaned and watched as the blonde emerged from his shunshin and Naruto's ninjutsu slashed right in front of him. Kakashi's eye wrinkled into a smile at the blonde's attempts to rip him to pieces after noticing his irritated frown. He continues to navigate the shunshin by using his eyes. Should I reveal the technique's secret to him or should I let him discover it on his own? Decisions, the jonin thought, evading a careless attempt to reveal himself. Taking advantage of the moment, Kakashi dropped into stance for a moment of his favorite jutsu and vanished, his one visible eye shining with unsung joy. Kakashi exclaimed, "1,000 years of death," as he launched Naruto into the treetops after stepping out of his own shunshin. "Yo wwwww," the blonde cried, gripping his swollen butt. Kakashi laughed at his student's degraded appearance and was completely unaffected by Sasuke's surprise taijutsu attack. As he continued to block the boy's blows with one arm, Kakashi reminded himself, "I need to talk to Guy about his current level." To make matters worse, the one-eyed jonin did not even raise his head from the book he was reading. Sasuke, unfazed, accelerated his pace, but the silver-haired jonin managed to dodge his blows as if they were insignificant. Sasuke kicked up another notch and charged forward, putting all of his weight and momentum into a single, potent blow. To the surprise of the Uchiha, however, Kakashi did not flee from his attacks as he had in the past. In contrast, Kakashi swiftly entered the fray, sidestepping his pupil's blow, then grabbing his head with his free hand and throwing the boy headfirst into Naruto's approaching form. As Naruto stepped out of his shunshin, the missile known as Sasuke struck him headfirst, sending them both hurtling into the ground in an unflattering heap. Kakashi began, "Let that be a lesson to you too," just before he felt a cool metal pierce his back. Sakura joked, "The same could be said for you Kakashi Sensei," as she gingerly took a kunai from the jonin's back. Sakura's hands were splattered with blood, proving that she had indeed been hit. Sakura, who was by far the weakest of the three, managed to score the decisive blow on their sensei by attacking him from behind while he was preoccupied with her teammates, as if by some strange and ironic coincidence. She was unaware, though, that the extremely lucky turn of events was that her kunai struck Kakashi's back. First, her reserves were so low that even at that distance, he could barely detect them, which is the only plausible explanation for her being able to come within striking range of the jonin. Second, the additional momentum from the chakra weight, which ironically was created when Kakashi threw her teammates across the field, was the only conceivable explanation for why her blow was powerful enough to pierce his flak jack. Sakura did, however, manage to strike Kakashi in spite of everything, as evidenced by the blood on his quickly shaking hands. Sakura backed up a few tentative steps and did her best not to breathe too much. But Sakura found it difficult to remain composed in the face of the blood's warm, sticky texture, sickeningly sharp smell, and subtle metallic taste in her mouth.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.